The only certainty in life is the uncertainty of existence, a truth that Locke has substantiated through experience. Perhaps just a moment ago, one was engrossed in watching videos, and in the next instant, one finds oneself traversing realms unknown. Countless objective worlds exist, akin to fledglings eagerly awaiting the arrival of every tiny insect. The self-assured time traveler ought not to believe that the so-called butterfly effect can alter the world they presume to comprehend. It is far more enigmatic than their understanding. Chapter 1. The Arrival of an Abnormality. The White Walkers are not mere corpses, they are peculiar and beautiful, crafted entirely from ice. In the land of Westeros, the White Walkers vanished for millennia, becoming mere figures of fright for children and tales spun by grandmothers at bedtime. As time flowed on, the White Walkers quietly awakened, or perhaps they had long been lying in wait. Within the Shadow Forest, north of the Wall, a hill resembling a clenched fist suddenly emerged, known as the Fist of the First Men. The western and northern faces are exceedingly steep, while the eastern side is only slightly gentler. It is a fortress that is easy to defend, yet difficult to assault. Commander Jorah Mormont of the Night's Watch leads 300 brothers stationed atop the Fist of the First Men, intent on scouting for and intercepting the wildlings from beyond the wall. Aside from the exposed rocky surface and the mountain itself, as far as the eye can see, everything is blanketed in snow. Enthusiasts of the winter landscape might revel in the frigid beauty, yet at this moment, a bewildered and despondent figure curls up, wrapped in a thin blanket. Countless paths lead to the world of traversal, yet it is Locke, a young man from the south, who finds himself transported from the comfort of his bed, having not even removed his shusto this icy realm, all due to a video on Game of Thrones. Fortunately, Locke does not have the habit of sleeping the nude. Otherwise, with nothing but a blanket, he would soon succumb to the cold. Clad only in a short-sleeved shirt, Locke shuffles to a large rock that offers a modicum of shelter from the biting wind. As his previously heated body finally cools, he finds his mind clouded with confusion. Habitually, he reaches for his phone, hoping to search for ways to survive in this frozen wilderness. After a moment of fumbling, the color drains from his face entirely. A city dweller, he realizes he cannot survive without his phone. Gazing up at the increasingly dimming sky, the howling wind invades his ears, and he longs for this to be merely a dream within his air-conditioned room. Locke raises his left hand, where a peculiar adornment made of feather-like gold blocks is fastened around his wrist. It has accompanied him through this journey. In his frost-bitten stupor, he finds this wrist-mounted device eerily familiar. As his thoughts drift, Locke murmurs, "A dual disc?" With that, he weakly lowers his left hand. It is too heavy, his arm aches. Despite recognizing this object as the ancient dual disc from the anime Yu-Gi-Oh!, he is at a loss as to how to activate it. Must he raise his hand high and shout duel? Locke does just that. He lifts his left hand above his head and cries out duel. Yet, the only response he receives is the increasingly ominous sound of the wind. Locke stares intently at the ancient dual disc, and with it, his last flicker of hope fades into the chilling silence. He let his left hand drop, the dual disc sinking into the snow, when suddenly, one of the feathered discs sprang up, revealing a monstrous pattern on its blank golden surface. With his entire body tinged with a burning chill, Luo Kai found himself in a state of half-consciousness, utterly oblivious to the changes of the dual disc as the monster's image transformed into a beam of golden light shooting out towards the rocks. A figure materialized, emitting a shrill cry that jolted Luo Kai from his stupor. Before he could discern the details, the creature lunged at him. Fear gripped him as he raised his left hand, yet the monster halted abruptly before him, almost brushing against him affectionately. Its elongated, bizarre head lacked eyes, and its neatly arranged, metallic teeth dripped with a strange fluid, resembling a dinosaur with a long, trailing tail. An alien. Luo Kai's heart raced violently, his body trembling uncontrollably as he struggled to comprehend how the dual disc had summoned such a being. Surely, even a chestnut ball would surpass this icy creature in worth. "Lie down," Luo Kai tentatively commanded. Obediently, the alien complied, its terrifying, elongated tail swaying in a semblance of understanding. So, it is a messenger alien. Yet, its size still surpassed what Luo Kai had anticipated. He issued several more commands, and the alien followed each one, revealing its intelligence and complete obedience to him. A wave of joy surged within him, and Luo Kai glanced at the dual disc on his left wrist. "Is this my golden finger?" But after the initial elation, a shadow of despair cast over Luo Kai's heart. What use was summoning an alien if he continued to freeze? He feared he might not survive until dawn. Casting a glance at the grotesquely beautiful alien, Luo Kai steeled his resolve and commanded the creature to draw closer. In that moment, the alien entirely abandoned its nature, curling around him like a loyal dog. Thus, the pair huddled beneath the rocks, listening to the howling wind and snow, ultimately weathering the night without incident. The next day, as Luo Kai slept, he felt something sticky on his face and a strange, tactile appendage brushing against him. Startled, he opened his eyes to find the alien licking him with its inner teeth. "Good dog." He kicked at the alien, hastily wiping away its saliva with a blanket, and scolded, "Don't ever use that thing to lick me again." Fortunately, the saliva was non-corrosive. The alien humbly lowered its head, perhaps understanding his words. After wiping his face with snow, Luo Kai finally managed to clean himself and crawled out from beneath the rocks, only to be suddenly beset by dizziness, the world spinning around him, causing him to collapse uncontrollably. The alien quickly supported him with its body, its limbs planted firmly on the ground, and then coiled its tail around him, lifting him onto its back. Burning with fever, Luo Kai felt miserable as he lay on the alien's back, while the dual disc emitted a gentle golden light as the feathered discs merged into one. After a night of brewing, the wind and snow intensified, rustling the blanket around Luo Kai. The alien's elongated tail tightened around him, and it emitted a low hum towards the distant ancestral peaks before turning to walk away. The instinct for biological hunting guided the alien to a river. Amidst the ice and snow, the river flowed with a milky hue, earning it the melodious name of Milky River. Though the alien possessed no eyes, it was acutely aware of its surroundings. After releasing Luo by the riverbank, the alien plunged into the water, rising upright like a seasoned fisherman, its tail trailing behind in a deliberate manner. After a lengthy wait, a palm-sized crucian carp emerged, and with a subtle movement, the alien's two claw-like appendages, resembling human hands, swiftly struck. Water splashed. The crucian carp narrowly evaded the attack. In the next instant, the alien's tail smashed the fish's head. Compared to the small crucian carp, the alien's sharp tail was overwhelmingly large, and the fish could not withstand the force. The tail delivered the crucian carp before the alien's mouth, which opened to reveal a set of orderly teeth that, along with its inner molars, efficiently tore the fish apart, leaving only the flesh on either side. Returning to the shore, the alien obediently presented the fish fillet to Luo's lips. After enduring the bitter cold and hunger, Luo, catching the scent of food, reluctantly opened his eyes, glanced at the alien and the fish it held, and after a moment of contemplation, seized the fish fillet and began to chew. The alien felt a surge of joy, its tail wagging as it leapt back into the river. Surprisingly, Luo found the raw fish palatable, devoid of any unpleasant odor, perhaps due to the fever impairing his sense of taste. After consuming the fish, Luo felt revitalized, tightening the blanket around him while observing the alien fishing, a smile unconsciously spreading across his face. He had survived. After some effort, the alien once again caught a larger crucian carp, cleaned it as before, and approached Luo with the fish. "What a splendid pet. Go ahead and eat on full." The fish was sweet and fresh, yet Luo, suffering from a fever, had little appetite. In truth, he longed for some stewed fish. Through the dual disc, he learned that the alien also required respiration and sustenance, albeit in a manner adapted to unimaginable environments. Contrary to expectations of horror, the alien, while consuming the fish, displayed a grace that even surpassed Luo's. Minutes later, the alien swallowed the fish along with the bones. Luo discarded the bones of his leftover fish to the alien, which eagerly consumed them. As long as there were no choking incidents, Luo exhaled a sigh of relief, rising to the riverbank. Gazing at the milky waters, he could no longer resist the dryness in his throat and bent down to scoop up a handful of water. Once removed from the river, the water transformed from milky to crystal clear. Hesitating for a moment, Luo took a sip, the refreshing liquid coursing down his parched throat, nothing compared to this soothing relief. After taking several more sips, he noticed the alien mimicking his actions, drinking water in the same manner. The creature, despite its unappealing appearance, was rather endearing. Subsequently, Luo instructed the alien to catch 5 or 6 more fish and prepare them. He tore a strip of cloth from his blanket, stringing the fish together to hang on the alien's body. With everything ready, the cold sun had now risen high in the sky. Confident at last, With food and the alien's protection, Luo believed he could escape this frigid, desolate place. Luo Kai sat astride the alien creature, feeling an exhilarating urge to gallop, despite having never ridden a horse. With his frail body still burning with a low fever, he opted to allow the alien to move steadily along the riverbank. As he gazed into the distance, the landscape was dominated by expanses of snow and scattered boulders, punctuated by dark, imposing peaks. The sight of the ancestral fist-shaped mountain evoked an inexplicable familiarity within him. Following the river's course, he spotted a towering peak resembling a jagged fawn. "Dog, which mountain should we head towards?" Luo Kai patted the alien's head, aware of his own geographical ignorance, unable to discern north from south. The alien emitted a warning sound and shifted its direction. Neither the ancestral fist peak nor the fawn-like frostbite mountain seemed to be their destination. Luo Kai, uncertain of his whereabouts, placed his trust in the alien's judgment. As the sun elongated their shadows, a sense of solitude began to creep into his heart. What manner of beings could possibly survive in such a desolate place? Closing his eyes to bask in the sunlight, Luo Kai was suddenly jolted as the alien came to a halt, its back arching slightly, causing him discomfort. The sound of a sword being drawn from its sheath made his heart race, and he opened his eyes to find a man and a woman before him. The man was clad in a black fur coat, exuding warmth, while the woman, appearing somewhat pale, was wrapped in sheepskin, her striking face partially obscured, tethered by a rope. Foreigners? Chapter 2. The Advancing Canine. Hello. Years of study were not in vain. Luo Kai waved amicably, his rudimentary English tumbling forth. "Is he one of yours?" Yegarite quietly inquired of John, who held the rope. The black alien was perceived by her as a pet of the night watchman. "No," John replied, releasing the rope and gripping his sword with both hands. "I have never seen such a creature. That fellow is not one of yours?" A fleeting glance exchanged between them revealed an unspoken understanding. Neither was lying. Though they appeared calm on the surface, turmoil churned within them. The unfamiliar faces, an unimaginable creature. Seeing John, clad in black and brandishing his sword, Luo Kai felt uncertain as the alien beneath him assumed a battle-ready stance. Suddenly, Yegarite let out a shriek and fled backwards. Despite being bound by the rope, her speed remained unaffected. John hesitated, glancing at Luo Kai and the alien, before choosing to pursue Yegarite. Having faced the undead, his fear of this creature was palpable. As he observed the two figures in fur coats attempting to escape, Luo Kai hastily urged the alien, "Dog, pursue them." In a swift motion, the alien bolted forward, and it was only thanks to Luo Kai's timely embrace that he was not thrown off. However, his cloak was not so fortunate, swept away by the wind. The fish dangling from his neck swayed, and as a messenger, the alien's speed surpassed that of ordinary creatures, being both swifter and more agile. The biting wind and the jarring ride left Luo Kai with unspoken grievances. A glance over his shoulder at John revealed his surprise at the alien's astonishing speed. Realizing he would never match such velocity, John resolved to halt and confront the creature instead. The shapeshifter has slain before, and it seems this entity before him would pose no challenge. As John paused and assumed a defensive stance, Roke urgently called out to halt the advancing creature beneath him. Yet it was too late. The creature lunged forward, leaping towards John, who stood poised with sword in hand. The opening was wide. John's pupils dilated as he aimed the Valyrian steel blade at the creature's chest. In the blink of an eye, the creature executed a complete somersault, its tail sweeping across John's side with a whip-like force. In that instant, John, a man of considerable size, was sent flying by the creature's tail, crashing heavily to the ground. Blood oozed from the corner of his mouth as he lay in agony, unable to rise, the long claw slipping from his grasp. Before John could regain his senses, the creature descended upon him, its grotesque head positioned menacingly above his face, its maw agape, viscous fluids dripping slowly onto his features. Just as the creature prepared to unleash its inner fangs to obliterate John's visage, Roke struck its head with a resounding clap, commanding, "Stop." The creature turned innocently towards him, subsequently releasing John from its grip. Believing himself on the brink of death, John was astonished that the dark-haired man had refrained from delivering a fatal blow. Roke instructed the creature to assist John in rising, then seated himself opposite him, saying, "My apologies, my pet can be a bit rough. Are you in pain?" John cast a glance at the creature, now obediently squatting beside Roke, astonished by its surprising sense of empathy, while he struggled to comprehend Roke's clumsy vernacular. "Who are you?" John wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, sensing the goodwill emanating from the dark-haired man. "Roke," he gestured towards the creature. "This is my pet." Pet. John regarded the toothy grin of the creature with a hint of resignation. It did possess a certain pet-like quality. It was simply far too large, even bigger than his direwolf ghost. Roke observed John's disheveled hair and face, feeling an inexplicable familiarity wash over him, compounded by John's black coat and the sword that lay discarded on the ground. A flash of realization struck him, and he exclaimed, "You are Jon Snow. You know me?" "Alas, who does not? You slayed the dragon." Roke abruptly silenced himself, realizing that spoilers were rather dull. "Dragon?" John found himself puzzled, the identity of the unfamiliar man shrouded in layers of mystery. Roke, too, was struck with nostalgia. He should have realized he had traversed into the realm of Game of Thrones, with its towering spires and jagged peaks. Though not a seasoned aficionado, he was aware of its lore, having simply momentarily forgotten. Struggling to prop himself up, John sat up with great effort, gasping for air. The impact of the creature's tail had left him breathless. Roke continued, "I sincerely apologize. My pet can be quite exuberant." The creature retrieved the long claw and presented it to John, its ugly yet endearing demeanor evoking memories of his ghost. Ghost would likely stand no chance against it. Such thoughts fleetingly crossed his mind as he accepted the long claw with difficulty, struggling to rise. He still needed to capture Ygritte, yet he noticed Roke staring at him with an intense shiver. "Would you mind sharing your clothes with me?" Luo Kai inquired first. "Huh?" John was momentarily rendered speechless, glancing at the grinning alien, and ultimately chose to relent, enduring the pain as he removed his garments. "Huh?" Luo Kai exhaled a long breath of cold air after donning the black coat. Despite its scent being laden with hormones, the warmth it provided was undeniably cherished. John, having shed his coat, felt the biting chill of the surroundings, yet with his clothing already removed, he could only endure. Ignoring Luo Kai, John ventured towards the direction where Yegarite had fled, clutching his long claws. After staggering a few steps, John collapsed onto the ground with a thud. "Dog, you've knocked him down like a clumsy fool." Luo Kai rushed to John's side. "Quick, come help me lift him." The alien, with nimble steps, darted over to John and effortlessly hoisted him up. Hey, be gentle." Luo Kai shot a glare at the alien. The alien shifted from lifting to cradling him in a princess embrace, revealing a soft side beneath its monstrous exterior. At that moment, the sun seemed to have reached its twilight, casting hues of red and yellow across the sky. Luo Kai gazed towards the distant ancestral peak, beckoning the alien to advance, seizing the opportunity to leave this perilous place before Yegarite could return with her savage companions. The alien felt no fear. It was Luo Kai who trembled. Retracing their steps, they unexpectedly stumbled upon a discarded sheet not far away. Observing John curled up pitifully in the alien's grasp, Luo Kai graciously wrapped the sheet around him. Having borrowed someone else's coat, one must return the favor. One must act with kindness. As darkness enveloped the land, a waning moon slowly ascended, its silvery light reflecting upon the snow, casting a few glimmers of brightness. Initially, Luo Kai intended to seek refuge in a cave, but under the prevailing circumstances, he and the alien chose to press onward with John in tow. Who knows from where the wild men's hidden arrows might strike? As they journeyed through the midnight hour, the silhouette of the ancestral peak became vividly discernible. The trio of dark figures, Luo Kai, the alien, and John, crawled like little worms across the white terrain. Atop the ancestral peak, the Night's Watch commander, Jeor Mormont, sat solemnly before a fire fueled by animal dung, his frail form betrayed by his silvery hair, a testament to the twilight of his years. This elder from Bear Island had dedicated his life to the Night's Watch. Days prior, the one-handed Colin had led a scouting party alongside John to survey the wild men. However, this party fell victim to an ambush by the wild men, severing their connection with the Night's Watch at the ancestral peak. With the fate of his most capable scouts unknown, the old bear felt a sense of foreboding as he journeyed northward. "Commander." Lost in thought, the old bear turned to see a portly Night's Watchman approaching, his kind face betraying a hint of uncertainty. "Samwell Tarley, a legitimate representative of the realm. I found this object. It emits light." Sam presented a palm-sized black rectangular item to the old bear. "Look, there's even a girl on it." Sam pointed at the exceptionally smooth black surface, which instantly radiated a gentle glow. This black object was unmistakably a smartphone, and lo and behold, it bore the mark of the fruit brand. Old Xiong was utterly astonished. Having lived for over half a century, he had witnessed countless exquisite and enigmatic wonders, yet nothing compared to the device before him. It paled in comparison. Cautiously accepting the glowing smartphone, Old Xiong fixated on the screensaver. The girl depicted was unfamiliar to him. "Where did you procure this item?" he inquired, scrutinizing the phone. "Near the foot of Chuanfeng Mountain, Commander," Sam replied, his face alight with excitement. Could it be something our sentinels left behind to combat the savages and otherworldly beings? Old Xiong shook his head. Although this luminous device was intriguing, it possessed no remarkable qualities beyond illuminating the surroundings and serving as a mirror. It was merely more refined than usual. Suddenly, the phone dimmed, prompting Old Xiong to exclaim, "Is it broken?" "No, you just need to tap it, and it will illuminate again." Hesitantly, Old Xiong extended his finger and lightly touched the screen, causing the screensaver to brighten once more. An involuntary sense of wonder filled his heart indeed. It was a fascinating gadget. Who could have crafted such a thing? Returning the phone to the eagerly watching Sam, Old Xiong rose to retreat into the tent to rest, leaving the stout fellow gazing vacantly at the screensaver by the fire. Curiosity compelled Sam to examine the buttons on either side of the phone. A gentle press of the power button on the right caused the screen to glow. Another press turned it off. So this was how one could illuminate it. A surge of delight filled his heart as Sam resolved to safeguard this device. Upon returning to the Great Wall of Despair, he would consult the venerable scholar, Iman, who was well-versed in such matters. Inadvertently, a swipe of his chubby hand activated the camera, and the flickering flames became vividly visible on the screen. By the old gods! Sam's eyes widened in astonishment, and for a long moment, he struggled to swallow the drool, threatening to escape. That night, both the elder and the stout fellow remained sleepless, consumed by wonder. Chapter 3 The third horn's call. The sky was shrouded in a gloomy gray, and Luo Kai was abruptly awakened by an urgent need to relieve himself. Upon opening his eyes, he beheld John and his alien companion striking a remarkably harmonious pose. Habitually, Luo Kai reached for his left pocket, only to be halted by the weight of the dueling disc on his wrist. At that moment, he realized he felt no weight from the disc, as if it were an intrinsic part of his being. Simultaneously, he recalled that his cell phone was no longer in his possession. Finding a scenic spot, he relieved himself, the pungent aroma dissipating some of the heat within him, bringing a wave of refreshing ease to his body. Yet, soon after, a gnawing hunger arose. As he turned around, he was startled to come face to face with the alien, causing him to step back and inadvertently tread upon his own excretion. Luo Kai, filled with exasperation, rubbed the ground vigorously, and then the dueling disc on his wrist unfurled a wing, allowing the alien to transform into a golden light that surged into the radiant wing. "Dog, this is a father's love for you." Returning to the small cave he had found the previous night, he discovered that John had regained consciousness from his stupor. And Luo Kai surmised it was not from the cold. Fish fillets strung on a cloth and a Valyrian steel sword lay neatly beside them. Upon seeing Luo Kai, John inquired, "How long was I unconscious? What about your pet?" "It has returned home," Luo Kai replied, extracting a frozen, stiff piece of fish from the cloth. He bit into it with force, tearing off a chunk of flesh. "I brought you here after I saw you collapse yesterday. So we're even regarding the coat you owe me." John's lips twitched as he glanced at Luo Kai's black coat, then compared it to the makeshift blanket draped over himself. He considered it a debt repaid. Touching his left side, he still felt a dull ache. The alien's tail had left its mark. "Care for a bite?" Luo Kai asked. A piece of fish clenched between his teeth as he handed another piece to John. John accepted graciously, since his capture by the wildlings. He had yet to taste a proper meal. The dried fish became increasingly delectable, leading Luo Kai to suspect it was no ordinary carp, with few bones and tender flesh. It would be divine in a stew. "What do you plan to do next?" Luo Kai inquired, as usual. "Return to the ancestral peak," John replied. Swallowing the morsel of fish, he too found the fish delightful, realizing why the wild folk of the northern lands were so fair-skinned and robust. "However, I am lost and cannot find the way to the ancestral peak," John continued. "Is it over there?" Luo Kai gestured with his right hand towards a distant, fish-shaped hill beyond the cave. John bit into the fish with gusto, feeling somewhat cornered. Their appetites were surprisingly large, and the dried fish was soon consumed. John sheathed his sword, feeling the soft blanket against his skin. He tore it off, handing it back to Luo Kai. "Thank you for the fish." With that, John cautiously made his way outside the cave. He needed to report the matter of the severed hand Colin and the wildlings to the commander at the ancestral peak. "Hey," Luo Kai called out to the departing John, No need for thanks. Jon hesitated, as the pain from his wound flared once more. The biting wind grazed his cheeks, and he found himself longing for that faint blue fabric. Not long after departing from the cave, Jon found himself encircled by a band of wildlings. Beneath their grayish-white leather attire, Ygritte's fiery red hair stood out in vivid contrast. I never imagined you could survive the clutches of that beast. She approached Jon, inquiring. Did you slay it? Suddenly, a wildling appeared from behind Jon, delivering a brutal kick to his leg and seizing his longsword. Struggling to rise from his knees, Jon's resilient demeanor stirred something within Ygritte. She longed to witness the moment when this crow would be subdued by her, as Jon was once again captured by the wildlings. Luo Kai understood that he could not evade the fate of the infiltrator. Even as Jon was taken away, he refrained from disclosing the existence of the nearby cave. The golden-winged creature unfurled one of its feathers, its alien form materializing before Luo Kai, nuzzling against his chest like a puppy awaiting affection. Luo Kai, somewhat annoyed, playfully tapped the creature's sleek head. He had begun to sense the creature's thoughts through the dual disc and could command it with his mind. Yet, words still needed to be spoken. Swiftly mounting the creature's back, the pair advanced toward the ancestral peak with a lively spirit. Time elapsed as they journeyed, the silhouette of the ancestral peak growing larger in their sight. Luo Kai glanced upward, attempting to gauge the time by the position of the sun. However, the sky was shrouded in thick clouds, obscuring what lay hidden within the grayish shadows. At the foot of the ancestral peak, Sam, serving as an officer, was shoveling snow, each scoop proving to be a formidable strain on his body. I am not suited for such labor, he panted, having endured a sleepless night. Finally mastering the use of the camera, that small black box could astonishingly capture images of people and their surroundings. It was a marvel beyond words. Sam dared not share this wondrous discovery with the other Night's Watchmen, including his close friends Grin and Eddie, who only knew that the mobile device emitted light. Despite Jon's rigorous training, Sam's timid nature had only slightly diminished. We're digging latrines at the world's end, Grin exclaimed, scooping a hefty pile of snow. I cannot fathom what could be worse. With a grim countenance, Sam glanced at the leisurely patrolling Night's Watchman nearby and asked, Where do you think Jon is at this moment? The melancholic Eddie chimed in. He left with the one-handed man and hasn't returned. I wager he is more likely dead. Sam quickly countered, He is not dead. Jon cannot perish. He is exceptionally skilled and wields a Valyrian steel sword. His father does as well. Moreover, the one-handed man, Corin, is currently the most formidable ranger. Yet, the issue remained that the truly skilled often did not survive long, while those of middling ability seemed to endure. Sam found himself speechless, yet he could not dismiss the kernel of truth in Eddie's words. At that moment, Gren suddenly struck something rigid with his shovel. He beckoned Sam to clear away the snow, revealing a circular stone slab marked with an insignia. Upon lifting the heavy stone, they unearthed a Night's Watch cloak wrapped within. Its exterior bore the marks of age. As Grin unwrapped the bundle, he discovered a trove of dark dragon glass within, accompanied by a horn, albeit with several cracks marring its surface. This must be dragon glass. Sam's greatest passion is reading. I once heard Bachelor Eamon mention them. They are also known as obsidian. Why did the Night's Watch bury them here? Gren picked up a spearhead, and as the dust settled, the smooth brilliance of dragonglass was revealed. Sam felt a striking resemblance to the phone he had found. Both gleamed with a similar luster. Suddenly, the ever-argumentative Eddie fell silent, his eyes fixed intently on a figure emerging not far from the ancestral peak. Hey, Sam, your Jon has returned. Eddie instantly recognized Jon's attire, albeit the figure's shape was somewhat different. And what was Jon riding? Upon hearing this, Sam hurried to the edge of the cliff to take a look. That was not Jon. His voice trembled with terror and anger. Eddie and Gran approached the edge and scrutinized the figure closely, confirming it was indeed not Jon. Quickly, go inform the commander. Eddie, shedding his usual flippancy, discarded his shovel and unsheathed the sword embedded in the snow, making his way down the mountain to ascertain who had donned his brother's clothing. Gren followed closely behind, while Sam remained, gazing at the pile of dragonglass and the horn atop it, ultimately deciding to cast the horn back into the marked stone slab, choosing instead to carry away the dragonglass. Alas, the legendary horn of winter lay abandoned. Near the foot of the ancestral peak, Luo Kai retrieved the aberration using a dueling disc. After all, this was the domain of the Night's Watch, and the aberration, comparable to a White Walker, could invite unnecessary trouble. The ancestral peak was far more expansive than Luo Kai had anticipated when suddenly, two dark figures charged towards him with alarming speed. The glint of white swords appeared menacingly. Are the Night's Watch truly this impulsive? Who are you? Eddie exclaimed, recognizing Luo Kai's unfamiliar visage. Why are you wearing that clothing? Did you kill Jon? Luo Kai, Jon's dear friend, secretly sighed in relief and replied, I know Jon. He lent me the clothes in exchange. Eddie, clearly skeptical of his accent, raised his sword towards Roke. Be careful. It's very sharp. Roke retreated a few steps. I saved him, so he let me borrow the clothes. And where is he now? Eddie pressed. He was captured by wildlings. Despite Roke's truthful account, Eddie and Gren were evidently distrustful of his appearance. Perhaps Roke was indeed a wildling in disguise. As the atmosphere grew tense, Old Bear finally arrived with the Night's Watch. He too was surprised by Roke's distinct features, however, having fought wildlings his entire life. Old Bear remained perceptive and did not mistake Roke for one of them. Yet, if Roke was neither a wildling nor a member of the Night's Watch, how had he appeared north of the wall? Roke surveyed the unfriendly faces of the black-clad men and realized he needed to concoct a thoroughly convincing reason for his presence. Perhaps fate was on his side, for the horn of the Night's Watch sounded from the peak of the ancestral mountain. One blast signified the return of the Rangers. Two indicated the approach of wildlings. As for three blasts, a succession of horn calls rang out, prompting the gathered members of the Night's Watch to unsheath their swords, bracing themselves for battle with the wildlings. At that moment, a long and urgent third horn call resounded. Chapter 4. A surfeit of selfies. The sound of three resounding horns echoed, causing the Night's Watchmen to pale in fear. Back to the top, roared Lord Commander Mormont, who, having previously faced an attack from the Whites, understood that the Northern expedition had met its inevitable defeat. Jon's attire had become inconsequential. All the Night's Watchmen followed their commander in a frantic dash, for the majority of their brethren remained stationed atop the mountain. And they must confront the oncoming threat together or retreat. Sam, burdened by his girth, struggled to keep pace. He managed only a few steps before the others had vanished, leaving him nearly alone. A stumble sent him sprawling into the snow, and despite his frantic attempts, he could not rise. The once tranquil sky suddenly roiled with stormy fury, as a blizzard materialized out of nowhere, enveloping the ancestral peaks. In mere moments, visibility diminished to the point where one could scarcely see their own outstretched fingers. The shift in weather sent Sam's heart racing. He felt as though it might leap from his chest. Suddenly, a chilling, high-pitched scream pierced through the howling winds. A horrific sound that slashed at his very soul. In that instant, Sam found himself devoid of the courage to rise. Enough with the shouting. A voice, reminiscent of a stern father reprimanding his son, barely managed to anchor Sam's soul back to reality. There are still people here. Amidst his terror, a flicker of hope ignited within Sam, granting him the strength to rise. In the next moment, a sleek, dark head appeared before him, ugly, terrifying, and repulsive. Once again, Sam was paralyzed by the sudden appearance of the creature, and in his disoriented state, he spotted the familiar figure of Roke atop the beast. To his astonishment, the creature he had been riding was indeed this monstrous entity. Roke, in exasperation, smacked the creature on the head, revealing his reluctance to let the boy encounter such a sight. Suddenly, the dual disc on Roke's left wrist emitted a faint glow, and his pupils dilated in horror as a series of eerie blue lights began to materialize around them. The creature's tail coiled around Sam, but it underestimated the weight of his plump frame, causing it to sink slightly under the pressure. The blue lights intensified, and the creature dashed away with Roke and Sam in tow. Despite the burden of 3.5 men, the beast's speed remained remarkably unimpeded. Glancing back at the retreating azure glow, Roke placed his right hand over his heart, leaping with extraordinary swiftness. Sam, still reeling from the shock, gazed vacantly at Roke, clad in his black coat, and murmured, "Jon, I knew you would come to rescue me." Roke turned his head, allowing Sam to glimpse only half of his face. He continued, "Gren and I unearthed something left by the Night's Watch brothers, a bag of dragon glass, the obsidian that Maester Eamon spoke of. I do not understand why the Night's Watch chose to bury it on the ancestral peaks. Furthermore, I stumbled upon a remarkable object nearby. It emits light and can replicate a person's likeness with astonishing accuracy." Upon hearing this, the creature came to an abrupt halt, causing the two riders to collide against each other. "Hand it over," Roke exclaimed, bracing himself against the creature's back and turning to face Sam. "Is it you?" Now regaining his composure, Sam's eyes widened in disbelief. He had mistaken his identity. He inadvertently revealed that dark object. Seeing that Sam remained still, the perceptive Luo Kai directly reached into his clothing. "What are you doing?" Sam exclaimed as the alien's tail coiled around his upper body, eliciting terrified cries from him. After fumbling for a while, Luo Kai finally located the black object, a phone, on the left side of Sam's abdomen. The familiar texture and weight stirred an indescribable joy within him. Once, a phone lay before me. Tapping the screen, Luo Kai gazed at the familiar wallpaper, overwhelmed with delight. After regaining his composure, Sam inquired in astonishment, "How do you know how to use it?" Without lifting his head, Luo Kai replied while entering the password. "It was originally mine. You merely found it. This time, saving your life makes us even." Sam wanted to retort, but was interrupted by Luo Kai's exclamation, "You took over 1,000 photos?" The hefty man lowered his head proudly, realizing that this black object genuinely belonged to Luo Kai. For how else would he know it had been used for so many drawings? "To be fair, your pictures are quite good," Luo Kai sincerely complimented, far surpassing my own. Though there are a few too many selfies. Sam instantly grasped that drawing himself amounted to taking selfies. Noticing the remaining battery, Luo Kai carefully stowed the phone away. As it was one of the 2 precious items he possessed in this world of Game of Thrones, Luo Kai's gaze drifted past Sam. The ancient ancestral peaks were entirely out of sight, now merely a horrific throng of whites led by White Walkers, bringing forth an apocalyptic winter wherever they went. Should an alien fall into the midst of the whites, even with its formidable exoskeleton and skeletal structure, it would likely not withstand for long. Though the alien had carried them a considerable distance, Luo Kai deemed it insufficient and resolved to flee even further. Realizing Luo Kai and the grotesque creature beneath him had no intention of stopping, Sam mustered his first courage in life. "Please put me down. You wish to return and offer your head?" Luo Kai interjected. "I am a Night's Watchman." "Nonsense. Had I not saved you earlier, you would have already become one of them, then engaged in battle with the Night's Watch." A sense of shame washed over Sam. He felt he was indeed the most inept among the Night's Watch. Luo Kai continued, "As I see it, your only recourse now is to pray that your commander can carve a bloody path for the Night's Watch. By the way, aren't you an officer? Send a raven, won't you?" With that revelation, a spark ignited in Sam's eyes. Yet, in this desolate, snow-laden landscape, where could he find a raven? Unless they returned to Castle Black in the haunted forest, where not only were the ravens, but also Gilly, whom Sam cherished dearly. Having reached a consensus, Luo Kai and Sam set off together towards Castle Black. The alien, bearing the weight of 3.5 individuals, grew increasingly reluctant after a while. If it were merely Luo Kai's weight, it would have posed no complaint. Being ridden by its master brought it joy. However, as a member of the alien species, it also had its pride, believing that Sam's physique should be utilized as a vessel for nurturing. Despite all persuasion, the alien remained discontented. Luo Kai did not force the dog, as he was not particularly inclined to remain close to a man. He reluctantly retracted the alien creature back into the dual disc on his left wrist. This act of retrieving his pet made Sam aware of Luo Kai's uniqueness. With a mobile phone, an unsightly monster, and golden adornments, could he possibly be a herald of some ancient deity? Despite his reverence, the loquacious Sam seized every opportunity to engage in conversation, chattering incessantly along the way. Luo Kai found great benefit in this. Sam's proficiency in spoken language alone was enough to convince him of the man's sincerity. Indeed, he was quite the character. As they journeyed, Sam casually mentioned his phone, expressing a desire to capture some photographs of the lush forest in the distance. This reminded Luo Kai, who promptly retrieved his phone, maintaining his usual demeanor. He first called over the plump fellow for a group photo, and then summoned the lonely alien to pose with Sam in various ridiculous stances. The embarrassment was as palpable as the horror. Ultimately, the trio managed to take a group photo. Luo Kai suppressed the nagging feeling of insufficient battery life and, with resolve, powered down the device. The alien returned to the dual disc, now merely a guest for the photo shoot. By the Milk River, Jon and Ygritte had exchanged roles. Now it was he who was bound, alongside the captured one-handed Colin. Even though the leading savage was eager to eliminate Jon, Ygritte would not allow her quarry to fall into another's hands. She revealed Jon's identity and, under the guise of a demand from the king beyond the wall, intimidated the savage leader. Observing Ygritte's duplicitous behavior, the astute Colin quickly grasped the situation. Throughout their journey, their interactions seemed adversarial, yet they were laced with flirtation. The more untamed a woman, the more she often found herself enamored with a man who disregarded her. Seizing a moment of laxity from his captor, Colin suddenly broke free and snatched a longsword. He shoved aside a savage attempting to intercept him and knocked Jon to the ground with a punch. Furiously accusing him, "Traitor, are you intending to lead Mance Rayder to the Black Castle?" 2 savages lunged to restrain Colin, but the savage leader commanded, "Let them fight." He then tossed the longsword beside Jon, eager to witness the antics of these 2 crows. Ygritte watched with keen interest as the 2 exchanged blows, her gaze predominantly on Jon. "Is this all you've got, you little scoundrel?" Colin, deftly provoking Jon further, taunted, "Is that what your traitorous father taught you? Or your whore of a mother?" Confused, Jon shifted from defense to offense, and after several slashes, he knocked Colin's sword away. To the astonishment of the savage leader and Ygritte, Jon plunged the long sword into Colin's chest. Staring blankly at Colin, Jon withdrew the sword, and they leaned against one another. "We are the guardians of the wall." With those whispered words, Colin collapsed to the ground. You can tell Mance it was he who killed Colin. Ygritte could barely contain her joy. Jon had finally become one of the free folk. Though the wild chief was taken aback, he had nonetheless acknowledged Jon, while the dismembered Colin remained the foremost enemy of the wildlings. Jon followed Ygritte, leaving behind only the burning corpse of Colin, who had sacrificed his life to brand Jon a traitor. Chapter 5. Ideals do not satisfy hunger, in contrast to the leisurely journey of Roose and Sam. The Night's Watch at the Ancestors' Peak arrived at Castle Black ahead of the two. Approximately 300 black-clad guardians faced the Whites, who knew not the meaning of death, and were defeated before battle commenced. After a brief resistance, Commander Mormont, accompanied by fewer than 50 Night's Watchmen, managed to escape the encirclement of the Whites. He understood that the resurgence of the White Walkers could not be countered by the meager numbers of the Night's Watch alone. Uniting all of the Seven Kingdoms was essential to triumph in the war between the living and the dead. Castle Black, constructed from pig pens, sheepfolds, wood, and mud, was decidedly rudimentary. Roose gazed at the earthen wooden structure, which diverged somewhat from his memories, and deemed it reasonable for it to bear the name Castle Black. How could such an insignificant place command respect from a Night's Watch comprised of nobles, criminals, and exiles? Although Castor was a wildling, there was no animosity between him and the Night's Watch, as their relationship was rooted in mutual interests. He had long engaged in dealings with the White Walkers, sacrificing all his sons and even offering the sons born from his daughter as tributes. Mormont was privy to these secrets and, in search of a refuge, chose to turn a blind eye. Following the Night's Watch's disastrous defeat, Castor's condition for receiving them was that they would work for him. Grin, Ed. Sam enthusiastically called to the two laboring in the pig pen. Upon hearing the familiar voice, Grin turned with haste. The portly figure, still wearing a charming smile, was a reminder that both sides had presumed each other dead on Ancestors' Peak. Ed noticed Roose beside Sam, and after the harrowing encounter with the Whites, his prejudices against the wildling had considerably diminished. After hugging, Sam began to introduce Roose, exclaiming, "He saved me," with warmth and simplicity, omitting any mention of the Whites. Roose smiled and waved amicably, prompting the two rough men to lower their guards and nod in acknowledgement, letting bygones be bygones. "Miss Pig, I can hardly believe you're still alive." The speaker was Lester, who had been sent to the wall for defying a woman's wishes and had since bullied Sam due to his own corpulence. Grin and Ed cast disapproving glances at him, while Sam, though angry, dared not retort. Another fool returned to be a sacrifice. "May you join that dead old man in the grave," Lester spat before departing. The significant defeat at Ancestors' Peak caused a shift in the attitude of the surviving Night's Watchmen toward Mormont. Grin and Ed could only attempt to temper their reactions, as their loyalty to the Night's Watch would not easily waver. The news of Sam's return did not stir much commotion in the eyes of most Night's Watchmen. He had always been somewhat superfluous. Mormont, however, showed concern for the exceedingly insecure fat man and summoned Sam and Roose for an audience. Upon their second encounter, Luo Kai perceptibly sensed that the vigor of the elderly man before him, once robust and resolute, had waned. The recent clash at the first Ancestor's Fist had extinguished the flame of his ambition. After discussing several particulars, Sam was eager to meet Castor's daughter, Gilly. "Commander, I shall pen a letter," he declared. Old Tali let out a heavy sigh, his gaze resting on Luo Kai. "As a token of gratitude for saving Tali, you may temporarily take refuge here. Though Castor is a savage, you have neither provoked nor offended him. He will provide you with food and drink." What indeed is the threshold of a man who, in a bid for survival, sacrifices his own son to the others? Luo Kai expressed his thanks and bid farewell to old Tali, feeling somewhat uneasy under the old man's penetrating gaze, as if he were laid bare before him. As he stepped outside, the essence of that threshold manifested. Castor, upon seeing Luo Kai clad in black, jeered at him in a language he could not comprehend. Yet his eyes were drawn to the golden dueling disc. Gold. Castor seized Luo Kai's hand, eager for further inquiry. Although mindful of old Tali's words regarding boundaries, Luo Kai was disinclined to be treated like a mere commodity on the street and forcefully extricated himself from Castor's grip. One must concede, the old man possessed considerable strength. Just as Castor was about to lunge at Luo Kai again, old Tali emerged from the room, bellowing, "Enough." Despite their recent defeat, his presence still commanded respect. Castor shot a glance at Luo Kai and his dueling disc before departing, as if granting a modicum of deference to the commander of the Night's Watch. "He is the host, we are merely guests." Upon hearing old Tali's words, Luo Kai merely smiled faintly, for he had no intention of squabbling with a man who spared not even his own children. Moreover, the man was not long for this world. Gilly had given birth to a boy, and Sam's countenance was troubled. Castor would surely offer this infant to the others, and he wished to protect the innocent mother and child. However, given Sam's disposition, his thoughts rarely translated into action. Yet, a man in the throes of passion may sometimes act out of character. Sam sought out Luo Kai, aware of his capabilities. I implore you to assist Gilly. She and the child are simply delightful. Luo Kai, savoring a rustic dish of lamb, found the unrefined meat commendably fresh, albeit with a hint of gamey flavor that he had not yet grown weary of. Noticing Luo Kai's indifference, Sam grew despondent, lingering in silence. With a mere 7/10 of appetite satisfied, Luo Kai glanced at the love-struck man, feeling a mischievous urge to tease him. Yet, matters of the heart should not be trifled with. Wiping his hands hastily, Luo Kai placed a reassuring hand on Sam's shoulder. Sam, happiness must be fought for. If you can save the child with your own hands, Gilly will surely see you in a new light. Sam felt a flicker of determination, yet fear held him back. Luo Kai sighed. Transforming a man was no simple task. Having never engaged in such matters himself, he could only theorize. 2 days later, the Night's Watch had divided into 2 factions, one steadfast in their beliefs, the other already harboring treachery. Approximately 14 members had conspired to plot a rebellion. Among them was Lester. Although Elder Xiong sensed these changes, he did not believe that the disgruntled Night's Watchman would resort to outrageous actions. In his advanced years, he underestimated the base desires of the hungry young men. The existence of scoundrels is not without reason. A Night's Watchman named Bailing had passed away due to a foot injury. Elder Xiong, along with other watchmen, incinerated his body and conducted a simple memorial service. Luo Kai was drawn into the gathering by Sam, listening to the elder's eulogy. He spoke of Bailing as a valiant man, an exceptional ranger, who hailed from White Harbor. Elder Xiong quietly inquired of Eddie beside him, who informed him of Bailing's origins. The praises continued. He came from White Harbor, ever diligent and unwavering in his vows. Regardless of the long journey or arduous battles, such a person is rarely seen again. At this moment, the other Night's Watchmen joined in unison. His vigil ended only with his death. Luo Kai, unable to restrain himself, echoed their chant. Such a tribute sounded like a jest to the faction of rebellious watchmen. What nonsense about a foot injury? He was clearly starved to death by Castor's reduction of their rations. Luo Kai wholeheartedly agreed, feeling quite full himself, yet acutely aware of the dwindling supplies. Seizing the opportunity while Elder Xiong stepped away, Lester began to incite. That bastard Castor, the moment we leave, will open a barrel of our ale. Sit down to relish ham and potatoes, and mock us starving in the snow. He is nothing but a damned savage. Though his voice was subdued, each word struck deep with the gathered watchmen. Eddie suddenly remarked, I didn't realize Bailing was so fragrant. Luo Kai immediately looked at him with admiration, though Eddie maintained a melancholic demeanor. Inside the hall, the aroma of wine and meat filled the moderately sized space. Castor, while drinking, gnawed on a chunk of sinewy meat. Elder Xiong sat opposite him, listening to Castor's vulgar banter, each sentence piercing the gathered watchmen. Castor even dared to suggest that Elder Xiong hand over the dying injured for him to handle. This was undoubtedly a blatant provocation and contempt. What are the Night's Watchmen? Defenders of noble ideals. At this moment, they were being trampled underfoot by a savage. Suddenly, Lester entered from outside, exclaiming, Who are you looking to slit the throat of? Old man? Elder Xiong replied, Wait outside. Lester showed no respect, countering, It's cold out there, and there is nothing to eat. My wife gave you bread. Castor interjected, utterly oblivious to the gravity of the situation. Hearing the shouts emerging from the earthen hall, Luo Kai's right hand gently caressed the dual plate on his left wrist. A feathered disc slowly unfolding, its bizarre patterns quietly glowing. The scene in the hall was nearing chaos. Castor brandished an axe, shouting that all the Night's Watchmen would sleep on empty stomachs in the snow. Elder Xiong, attempting to uphold the so-called law, found himself overwhelmed. Just after pushing Lester a few steps, another watchman plunged a dagger into Castor. His daughter and wife screamed, and chaos erupted. With Castor dead, Elder Xiong could no longer tolerate the disobedience of the watchman who brazenly defied the law. Drawing his longsword, he declared, I will sever your head. As the old bear stood firm, Lester stealthily drew a dagger from behind him and thrust it towards his back. Sam could hardly believe that a night watchman would dare to assassinate their commander. Glenn pulled out his weapon and engaged in a fierce struggle with the night watchman who had slain Castor, while the other 2 factions of night watchmen clashed together, filling the fortress of Castor with echoes of screams and the clashing of weapons. Despite the treachery he endured, the old bear remained resolute, seizing Lester by the throat in an attempt to choke the life out of him. However, Lester possessed a dagger. Yet, fate is unpredictable. Just as Lester was about to finish off the elderly man before him, his chest was suddenly pierced. A chilling scream akin to that of a wraith silenced all the night watchmen, but Sam felt a surge of joy. An alien creature had appeared behind Lester, its elongated tail piercing through his chest. The bipedal alien effortlessly flung Lester aside, leaving the old bear momentarily stunned as he gazed upon the eyeless monstrosity. Momentarily forgetting the pain in his back. Illuminated by the firelight, the other night watchman finally discerned the creature's form. Chapter 6. No more compromise. Seeing the situation subdued by the alien, Sam hurried to the old bear's side, supporting him. The night watchman who had killed Castor was paralyzed with fear at the sight of the clawed alien, and Glenn was momentarily stunned as well. Why did this creature seem somewhat familiar? Seizing the opportunity while Glenn was unguarded, the night watchman charged towards the alien. With its mouth agape, the alien drooled, emitting a series of terrifying low growls. Was the prey not only refusing to flee, but also daring to challenge its hunter? The charging night watchman swung his sword at the alien, but astonishingly, the creature did not evade. It allowed the silver blade to strike its form. Sam, who was sheltering the old bear nearby, was taken aback. Could it truly feel no pain despite being struck by such a sword? The long sword struck the alien's left shoulder, but the blade merely sank slightly into the gaps of its bones, failing to penetrate its defenses. The night watchman gazed in terror at the creature, pondering what on earth it was. I should have aimed for its head. Suddenly, the longsword snapped, the alien's green blood exhibiting a highly corrosive nature, instantly dissolving the steel into a molten puddle. In retaliation, the alien's tail plunged into the night watchman's forehead, twisting, and with a sickening crack, his head split open, scattering a mixture of red and white. After dispatching the two leaders, the remaining rebellious night watchmen lost their will to resist. Some fled, while those who surrendered met a gruesome fate at the hands of the alien. Well done, pup, Luo Kai remarked, covering his nose, unable to bear the sight of the bloody aftermath. The bandaged old bear, with Sam's assistance, approached Luo Kai, casting a glance at the obedient alien, and said, Luo Kai, I owe you a life, and the night watchmen owe you a debt that is hard to repay. Luo Kai waved his hand dismissively. No need for thanks. I have long disapproved of your night watchman. The old bear and Sam exchanged awkward glances. The threshold for joining the night watchman was exceedingly low, and virtually anyone who wished to enter could do so. They vowed to remain celibate and refrain from vice, excelling in upholding their oaths. Moreover, once one joined the night watchman, any crime committed, even regicide, would be forgiven. Glenn and Eddie approached, casting a fearful glance at the alien before reporting to Old Bear the outcome of the rebellion. A total of 14 rebels had risen against them. 11 were slain by the alien and the night watchman, while the remaining 3 fled at the sound of the alien's terrifying cries. The casualties among the guards were considerable, mostly due to ambushes by the dissenters they had deemed unsatisfactory. Following this conflict, aside from the wounded, merely 20 of the night watchmen remained at Castle Keep, a stark decline from over 300 who had ventured north. Old Bear closed his eyes in sorrow, feeling an overwhelming sense of responsibility for the calamity. Luo Kai, unable to endure the weight of the situation any longer, rushed to a breezy spot to inhale the crisp air deeply. The alien approached him from behind, gently stroking his back. The juxtaposition of slaughter and submission was indeed enviable. Suddenly, the alien crouched low, its limbs taut, emitting a continuous warning growl. Luo Kai swiftly scanned the surrounding woods. If the alien was this tense, who else could it be but the whites? The once tranquil woods surrounding Castle Keep erupted with screams akin to those of the alien. Accompanied by an unexpected blizzard, the night watchmen, who had been preparing to burn the corpses, hastily drew their swords in vigilance. An elderly woman emerged, cradling an infant and singing a lullaby. Commander! Sam watched the child in the woman's arms with anxiety, fearing it might be Gilly's baby. A sacrifice. If the woman placed the infant in the designated spot for the whites to take, the castle would be safe for tonight and the ensuing days. Old Bear called out as he watched the woman drift away. Glenn, bring her back. The strong and robust Glenn dashed forward, and Sam felt a wave of relief wash over him. At last, the commander was no longer yielding to the whites. Glenn returned with the elderly woman and the infant, and the other women of Castle Keep emerged from their hiding places, some pregnant, others holding baby girls, adorned in simple garments. Old Bear's gaze swept across this assembly of women, reduced to mere vessels and slaves by Castle Keep, and he turned to Luo Kai at the wind's edge, imploring, "We need your assistance." Yet Luo Kai replied, "Let us discuss this another time. I have pressing matters." Amidst the astonished looks of Sam and Old Bear, Luo Kai mounted the alien and disappeared into the dark woods. "Commander, he has left," Sam lamented, watching Luo Kai's retreating figure. Old Bear remained silent. His request for Luo Kai's help was not aimed at confronting the whites, but merely to ensure the safety of the women and children of Castle Keep. After all, the alien was terrifying, and any woman seeing it would scream and flee, rendering the night watchman's attempts to persuade them futile. Luo Kai, having ventured only a short distance into the woods, instructed the alien to set him down. The dueling disc on his left wrist emanated a golden glow as it constricted painfully, causing Luo Kai to endure unspeakable agony. He yearned to sever his hand. Despite the torment, his innate resilience shone through as he remained silent. Is this all you can endure? Cold sweat trickled down Luo Kai's forehead as the alien sensed its master's suffering and paced restlessly, suddenly lifting his black coat. Luo Kai used the hem to cover the glowing dual disc, his neck veins bulging. His refusal of Elder Xiong's request was unavoidable at that moment. He could already feel the dual disc contracting. Within the depths of his coat, the dual disc began to slowly dissolve, transforming into a pool of golden liquid that stained his shattered left wrist. Luo Kai could no longer endure it, collapsing unconscious in the snow. The creature emitted an anxious shriek, falling into slumber as Luo Kai fell. Outside the earth ramparts of Castle Cast, Elder Xiong led the Night's Watch, forcibly escorting all women, willing or unwilling, out of the fortress. Ignite. With Elder Xiong's command, Gran and Eddie hurled torches at the so-called fortress. As long as this mud hut existed, anyone could become the next cast. The flames blazed brightly, piercing through the dark, lush shadows of the ghostly forest. The Night's Watch was defeated, yet their commander triumphed, completely severing ties with the past. To some extent, allowing Cass to sacrifice his son to the others rendered Elder Xiong essentially no different from Lester. Some people never comprehend their mistakes until death, while others learn from a single experience. In the vast, wide expanse of the lands beyond, hundreds of thousands of wildlings lived under the leadership of Mance Raider, simultaneously battling the others and the Night's Watch's rangers. With the assistance of Ygritte, Jon Snow gained the trust of Mance, the king beyond the wall, becoming one with the wildlings. Perhaps as a test, Mance assigned Jon to a wildling team led by Tormund, known for slaying giants, to scale the treacherous wall, ascending over 200 meters, and encircle the Black Castle with a surprise attack on its scant defenders. Subsequently, they coordinated efforts to open the wall's passage, enabling the wildling army to invade the north and the Seven Kingdoms. The emergence of the others was the direct catalyst for Mance's ambitions. Despite being a traitor, Jon's heart remained tethered to his identity as a member of the Night's Watch, until an incident arose, introducing a new hurdle within him. While the wildling team rested near the Milkwater, a wildling named Orell confronted Jon, who was collecting firewood, and provocatively inquired about the wall's guards. The wall has 19 castles. How many are manned? 3. Which 3? Black Castle, Eastwatch, and Shadow Tower. Jon answered truthfully, aware that Orell was a ward capable of inhabiting his eagle and commanding it to scout above the wall. How many men remain at Black Castle? Tormund asked, seated on the ground. 1,000. You lie. Enraged, Jon discarded the wood he was carrying. What will happen to your eagle after I kill you? Will it drift away like a severed kite or plunge to the ground? Ygritte chimed in. He not a crow. Orell mocked. Just because you wish to possess him doesn't he mean you can make him one of your own? With his thoughts exposed, Ygritte drew her sword. Knowing is one thing. Why utter it? Don't you realize he's a girl? Tormund stood, yanking Orell aside, glaring at Jon with a threat. Kid, I like you. But if you lie to me, I'll rip your guts from your throat. Jon directly echoed the responses of 1,000 individuals. After resolving the crisis, Ygritte grew bolder, seizing Jon's sword and teasing him. The two pursued each other into a cave, where the innocent young man, under the allure of the beautiful woman, unwittingly performed a series of calisthenics. Whether naive or cunning, Jon nonetheless found himself enamored with the first woman in his life. The earth and wooden house burned throughout the night, leaving Castle Black in ruins. Rhaegar stood on the slope, silently watching, astonished by the audacity of the old bear, who had set the entire place ablaze. Sunlight filtered through the branches, illuminating Rhaegar's face, with the left pupil shimmering with golden light. This transformation was a consequence of the dual disc merging with his left hand. With one eye black and the other gold, Rhaegar felt somewhat unsettled. While he could accept this change, the agony of the previous night lingered in his mind. A flash of gold from his left eye revealed the once melted dual disc reappearing, now firmly clasped around his left wrist. It seemed he would no longer fear others coveting his golden eye. Amidst the smoldering ruins, an alien creature emerged from a concealed cellar, discarding a bloodied half-corpse. Its dark attire still captivatingly striking. 13 murmured as Rhaegar raised his left hand, mimicking the creature's actions. On the left head of the creature, a golden light emerged, reminiscent of Rhaegar's left eye. Chapter 7. He is a good man. Discussions about what constitutes the highest realm invariably lead to a synthesis of ideas. For instance, the unity of man and sword, where the individual becomes the blade. Perhaps the former Rhaegar could not grasp such a concept, but now he comprehended it fully. Following the integration of the dual disc within his being, the connection between Rhaegar and the alien reached unprecedented heights. He could now enter the creature's body directly through his consciousness, no longer needing the dual disc to convey commands. It was akin to using a mobile phone. Previously, one could only tap the screen, whereas Rhaegar had now become the device itself. What is intelligent control? This was the essence of it. Rhaegar's consciousness entered the alien's form, allowing him to utilize its body directly or indirectly. Automatic mode. The creature operated itself. Semi-automatic. Rhaegar and the alien shared control of its body. Manual mode. Rhaegar exclusively commanded the alien's body, with the creature acting as a coach, observing and guiding. As long as he did not overexert the alien, he could play as he wished. Crucially, Rhaegar's consciousness was not entirely detached from his own. In the third mode, he was almost completely separate. The extent of this capability depended on the processing power of Rhaegar's mind, as he oscillated between the two bodies. Multitasking was essential. Should a new summoning creature emerge from the dual disc in the future, it would undoubtedly lead to a trifecta of control. The term extravagant hardly sufficed to describe this transformation. It bordered on the extraordinary. Poor alien creature, it reveled in the newfound ability to communicate openly with its master. After all, during Rhaegar's inaugural attempt to drive this body, his control was not entirely smooth. The front claws often failed to coordinate with the hind legs, and he frequently stumbled over his own tail. Achieving true unity between man and beast required further refinement, as not every child is born capable of running. The Great Wall, stretching over 480 kilometers, stands as a formidable barrier, yet the Night's Watch is but a mere shadow of its former self, dwindling from 19 castles to a mere 3 currently manned. Nevertheless, this ancient and majestic edifice, towering over 200 meters, remains the insurmountable divide between the lands beyond and the north. It is also the primary reason why the White Walkers have not further invaded Westeros since their resurgence. In this desolate place, not even a signpost can be found. Luo Kai, seated by the fire, roasted ham after a long day's journey, still ensnared in the eerie shadows of the haunted forest. He intended to use his mobile compass to ascertain his direction, but it seemed ineffectual. The needle accurate, yet his sense of direction utterly confounded. With nightfall upon him, he reluctantly retrieved the ham, cream, and flint he had scavenged from the cellar, exerting considerable effort to ignite a fire in the snow. Watching a particular man's show had proven beneficial. Emerging from the darkness, the creature approached, arms laden with dry wood, presenting itself before Luo Kai. He tossed a piece of roasted ham towards it, and with joyful precision, it caught the morsel with its inner teeth. After silently documenting this moment, Luo Kai leaned against the fish, his left eye glimmering with golden light in the flickering flames. A gust of wind swept through, rustling the blood-red leaves, while the grayish-white branches twisted like the weathered skin of an elder. The fire, stifled by the wind, flickered perilously close to extinction when the cawing of a raven pierced the air, chaotic and disordered. Luo Kai, resting against the fish, succumbed to sleep, while the creature across from him bore a flicker of gold upon its head, soon fading into obscurity. In the next moment, it vanished into the dark woods. A raven perched upon the branch of the fish, gazing down at Luo Kai below. Amidst the labyrinth of shadows, Sam clutched Gilly's hand tightly, their footsteps unyielding as if some monstrous entity pursued them from the gloom. After igniting Castle Casterly, Old Bear and the Night's Watch, along with a throng of wounded, women, and infants, sought refuge at the Black Castle. However, they were met with an ambush by White Walkers and Whites. In an instant, the meager numbers of the unarmed women and a few men disintegrated against the relentless tide of the Whites, which had already overwhelmed over 300. Old Bear, having evaded the rebellion, imparted his last words to Sam before being engulfed by the horde of Whites. Aside from Sam, Gilly, and Eddie, the remaining brothers of the Night's Watch fell victim to the slaughter. Sam rescued Gilly and her infant from the sanguine mire, yet found himself separated from Gilly and Eddie. While seeking refuge in an abandoned cabin, Sam and Gilly, entangled in flotation, were suddenly confronted by a White Walker, its sinister intent focused on Gilly's child. Dismissed by the Walker, Sam's surge of courage for the woman he cherished compelled him to extract the dragonglass from his pocket and thrust it into the unsuspecting creature. With a piercing scream, the White Walker transformed into a block of ice. Having unlocked the title of White Walker Slayer, Sam paid no heed to anything else. Seizing the fallen dragonglass from the ice and grasping Gilly's hand as they fled the scene of the encounter, thus unfolded the scene of their frantic flight through the woods. "Are we safe?" Gilly, cradling the infant, inquired. Her breath labored as fatigue began to weigh on her. Sam glanced back at the dark forest, uncertain whether there were any Whites or corpses pursuing them. Suddenly, a shadowy figure descended from the sky, landing before the two. Startled, Gilly fell to the ground upon the unexpected appearance of the creature, yet she clutched her child tightly. Sam's face turned pale with fright, but he quickly recognized that this was not just any creature, it was Roke's mount. "Hey, it's me," Sam gasped, unable to contain his joy. "Where's Roke?" The creature approached Sam, placing its right claw on his shoulder, exuding the warmth of a long-lost friend. Confused by the creature's demeanor, Sam found himself at a loss, awkwardly smiling in response. The creature mimicked Roke's movements, directing its head toward the fallen Gilly and making strange cooing sounds, further bewildering Sam. Gradually, Gilly composed herself. She had heard Sam speak of Roke and the formidable beast he could ride into battle. So this is what it looked like. The creature released Sam and moved toward Roke's location, turning back to gesture invitingly. Come here. Sam exhaled in relief and hurried to help Gilly to her feet. Is this the Roke you mentioned? Gilly inquired. A pet, Sam replied, wiping his round face with his hand. Let us go. It will lead us to Roke. As they walked, the creature suddenly covered its mouth and began to tremble, resembling someone stifling a laugh. Sam, watching from behind, assumed the creature was merely in heat. After a short journey, the creature finally brought Sam and Gilly before Roke, who lay beneath the fishbeam tree. Roke, Sam exclaimed, eagerly approaching with Gilly. Yet he did not rouse Roke from his slumber. Instead, the creature waved to them in greeting. Didn't I tell you? Sam said politely, walking up to Roke and gently patting his shoulder. Roke could no longer feign sleep. He opened his eyes, stifling a laugh. Your eyes? Sam exclaimed in horror. New skin. Roke shrugged off the concern, rising to embrace Sam and greeting Gilly with a cheerful, hi. However, upon seeing Roke's golden left eye, Gilly immediately knelt. Sam quickly pulled away from Roke to assist her, declaring, he is my friend, and therefore your friend as well. There is no need for you to kneel. Hearing Sam's words, Gilly reluctantly stood, though she still averted her gaze from Roke. Sam, perhaps oblivious in his infatuation, did not grasp the significance as Roke understood. Gilly, raised in the wild, likely perceived Roke's golden eye as a symbol of divinity. Sam, didn't you and Gilly return to Black Castle with Old Bear? Roke inquired, offering them a piece of ham. What transpired? Sam replied morosely, the commander is dead. We encountered whites. Roke immediately grasped the gravity of the situation. Old Bear had, after all, met his demise not at the hands of a traitor, but at the hands of whites. Sam continued, while fleeing, we encountered another white. It sought to take Gilly's child, and I killed it with dragon crystal. His tone remained calm. Yet Roke could envision the courage Sam displayed in defense of his beloved. Love indeed has the power to drive one to madness. Luo Kai, what happened to that thing on your left hand? Sam inquired after finishing his ham, noticing the absence of a dual disc on Luo Kai's wrist. Have you been robbed? Luo Kai raised his left hand, and a flash of golden light appeared as the dual disc clicked into place on his wrist. Jill, look quickly. Sam exclaimed with a tone of pride, it's magic. Jill played along, embodying the demeanor of a coy woman, much to Sam's satisfaction. Luo Kai, however, realized that this rotund fellow was treating him as a mere sidekick. The next moment was even more outrageous. Sam continued, Luo Kai, could you take a photo of Jill, her child, and me with your phone? Throughout their previous interactions, Sam had learned what a photograph was, the concepts of taking pictures and selfies. Luo Kai took a deep breath and forced a smile, saying, my phone is nearly out of battery, and it's so dark that the pictures will turn out blurry. Sam looked a bit puzzled by this, wondering what out of battery meant. Could that contraption called a phone possibly contain the lightning from the skies? No wonder it could emit light. Not wishing to remain a mere sidekick, Luo Kai sought an excuse to take a break. Leaving Sam and Jill cozied up by the fire. He is a good man, Jill remarked, gazing into the flames. Indeed, Luo Kai is better than some of the Night Watch brothers, Sam agreed, lying down beneath the fish beam. Luo Kai's body shuddered as he muttered a curse under his breath before drifting into a deep slumber. As dawn broke, Luo Kai, feeling cold and sore all over, roused Sam and Jill, who were still nestled by the fire. After finishing his ham, Sam pulled Luo Kai aside to discuss their next steps, ostensibly to provide little ones with space to eat. Through their conversation, Luo Kai gathered that he was situated near the Black Castle to the west. But the journey was long. The abandoned castle known as Long Night Fortress was the closest to him. The Night Watch had blocked access to the Great Wall near the abandoned castle. But Long Night Fortress possessed a hidden passage called the Black Gate that could traverse the wall. That tunnel had likely not been used for centuries. All this information was gleaned from an ancient tome Sam had read. After finalizing their route, Jill approached with the baby in her arms, the infant appearing quite content. Likely well-fed. Chapter 8. Betrayal. A small screen cannot reveal the true beauty of the world. At the foot of the Great Wall of Despair, Luo Kai gazed up at the walls constructed of ice and giant stones, repeatedly searching his mind for words, yet failing to find one that could adequately express his astonishment. Finally, he blurted out an exclamation of disbelief. Luo Kai handed his long-dormant phone to the alien. The creature's sharp claws barely managed to activate the camera. Simultaneously controlling his own body and the alien, they took a selfie with surprisingly good results. It is often said that love can cloud one's judgment. Yet Sam showed no hesitation, seizing the opportunity to pull Jill closer and join in the photo. As Luo Kai observed Sam shamelessly instructing Jill on how to pose for the camera, his interest waned, and he stepped back after reluctantly taking a single photo, allowing the family of 3 to capture their portrait. Noticing that the battery still had a third of its power, Luo Kai switched the alien's capabilities to video recording. When Jill saw the footage, she could hardly fathom that this little black box possessed such magical power. Luo Kai put away his phone and said to Geely, "That's enough for now. Perhaps I can show you more another time." Geely nodded, still unable to meet Luo Kai's gaze. At that moment, Sam approached Luo Kai and exclaimed, "I found it. The black door is right there." He pointed to a certain spot on the ice wall, which, upon closer inspection, revealed a concealed passage. Luo Kai turned to face the ghost shadow forest. Since arriving in this frigid place, his slight frame had only yearned for escape. However, as the time for farewell approached, an unexpected pang of reluctance stirred within him. "Luo Kai?" Sam called out from within the tunnel, his voice echoing through the vast space. Luo Kai turned and stepped into the tunnel, yet the creature did not follow. Instead, it approached the ice wall. A shimmer of gold illuminated its smooth head. With claws and a long, pointed tail, the creature effortlessly clung to the ice wall, cautiously making its way upward with a series of leaps, rendering the towering 200-meter wall no longer an insurmountable barrier. It bounded across the artificial ice wall like a flea. Meanwhile, within the tunnel, Luo Kai, Sam, and Geely, cradling a baby, had traversed a considerable distance, while the creature had already reached the summit of the Great Wall of Despair. It let out a piercing cry that reverberated through the ancient walls beneath. Without reaching the Great Wall, all is in vain. Luo Kai paused, resonating with the sentiment. He had never visited the Great Wall of his homeland, yet today, he fulfilled that wish in this world. Simultaneously, John followed the wildlings over the Great Wall. In stark contrast to the creature's ease, he faced perilous challenges, nearly meeting his end at the hands of the disdainful Orel. After crossing the wall, the wildling group stumbled upon a small hut, inhabited only by an old man and 8 horses. John explained that this was a stable for the Night's Watch. Crouching beneath the earthen embankment, John remarked, "If we kill him, it will surely attract the Night's Watch." Tormund grinned, clearly pleased. "Killing the crows hiding in the castle is no easy feat. We excel at hunting them in the wild." With that, Tormund led the wildlings toward the old man's hut. And John, albeit reluctantly, followed suit. Halfway there, he struck a stone with his Valyrian steel claw. The sound was crisp yet discreet, unnoticed by the other wildlings preoccupied with their sprint. However, the tethered horses were startled and began to whinny in panic, prompting the old man to rush out to investigate. Upon spotting the charging wildlings, he hastily mounted a horse and fled. As an archer, Ygritte raised her bow, aiming at the fleeing old man. "Ygritte!" John interrupted her aim, and the arrow narrowly missed the elder. Seeing the old man escape on horseback, Tormund issued a command to pursue. Despite his earlier bravado with John, he was keen to avoid alerting the Night's Watch before reaching the Black Castle. Capturing the old man was imperative. Under the unyielding gaze of Sam, Luo Kai, unable to withstand the pressure, permitted Geely, holding the baby, to ride atop the creature. After garnering another wave of goodwill, they arrived at an abandoned village known as Backcrown Town. In the village stands a 5-story tower, where once a queen rested upon her mighty dragon. Alas, the grandeur of yesteryears has faded into oblivion. As the sky darkens, ominous gray clouds flicker with flashes of lightning. "Didn't you say your phone needs charging?" Sam pointed at the clouds. "Show me how you managed to capture lightning in your phone." Rokai stood in stunned silence for a moment, then silently retaliated by kicking at Sam, who surprisingly evaded the unexpected attack with agility. As Sam dodged, he inquired, "Is there a problem? What could possibly be wrong?" "The greatest problem is your desire for me to be struck by lightning." Rokai, increasingly agitated, pursued Sam, leading to a playful scuffle around the abandoned tower. Ultimately, with the help of an alien entity, Rokai imparted a profound lesson to Sam. The electricity within a phone differs vastly from that which descends from the heavens. A thunderbolt, as thick as a bowl, rent the clouds, startling the infant cradled in Gilly's arms, who let out a wail. In this far northern land, thunderstorms are a rare occurrence. With the rumble of thunder, rain cascaded in torrents, prompting Rokai, Sam, and Gilly to seek refuge within the tower. The alien, however, remained outside, lowering its body to the ground, and in the next instant, it vanished into the dense curtain of rain. Inside the tower's first floor, Rokai discreetly rose from his seat. His golden left eye seemed to penetrate the brick walls, and as he approached the staircase, he hesitated, withdrawing his right foot back. Sam and Gilly were preoccupied with soothing the distressed infant, oblivious to Rokai's unusual behavior. At that moment, the horseman, pursued by Tormund and John, arrived at the foot of the tower, only to find Orel and Ygritte blocking his path. "Surrender!" Jon shouted at the old man, while Tormund yanked him from his mount. Other wildlings began to emerge from the downpour. As thunder boomed again, Sam, having calmed the baby, caught sight of the unfolding scene through the window. Surprised to see Jon alongside the wildlings. Luo Kai? Luo Kai. Sam whispered urgently, only to discover that Luo Kai was nowhere to be found within the tower. On the 5th floor of the tower, there existed a group that had arrived in the town of Aftercrow before Luo Kai, though its members were rather unique. Bran. Paralyzed from the waist down, the giant-like Hodder with a simple demeanor, Bran's brother Rickon, and the wildling women Osha, Mira, and the siblings Jojen and Bran. Following the occupation of Winterfell by the newly legitimized Theon, Osha seduced this treacherous character, seizing the opportunity to escape with Bran and Rickon, guided by the three-eyed raven. They encountered Mira and Jojen along the way, journeying northward to traverse the wall and receive the raven's legacy. The incessant thunder agitated Hodder, who repeatedly shouted, "Hodder! Hodder!" The gentle giant's stature was not to be underestimated, and Osha rushed over to embrace him, soothingly saying, "It's just thunder, my gentle giant." Hodder calmed for but a moment before releasing an even louder cry. Jojen turned to Bran, urging, "They will hear him. Tell him to be quiet and cease his incessant noise." "Adel, calm down," Bran softly urged, attempting to soothe the agitated figure before him. Below the tower, Oriel turned to gaze at the window on the 5th floor. As a shapeshifter, his senses were more acute than the average. Observing Adel's escalating turmoil, Bran, paralyzed and in desperation, rolled his eyes back, turning them a milky white. In an instant, Adel seemed to transform, quietly settling on the ground. The tower fell into a profound silence once more. "Someone up there is shouting," Oriel remarked to Tormund. "Just thunder," Tormund replied dismissively. "Perhaps there's a haunting occurring above." Undeterred, Oriel directed his hawk to circle above the tower, hoping to locate Bran and the others. Yet, his search yielded naught. He should have allowed the hawk to fly through the window. "Old man, neither blade nor sword will save you now." Tormund squatted down, seizing the dagger from the horseman's trembling hands. "Where do you wish to ride to now? At this point, it matters not, does it?" The elder understood, recognizing that this band of wildlings would not spare him. Indeed, it mattered little. Oriel approached, stating, "Kill him, or he will alert the crows." Tormund found this reasoning compelling. Rising to draw his large cleaver, politely inquiring, "You can understand this, can't you?" The elder accepted his fate with dignity, replying, "At least allow me to die standing." Tormund helped the elder to his feet, poised to strike, but Oriel interjected, "Let that crow do the deed." A jolt of apprehension surged through Jon. Why did the shapeshifter consistently target him? "Are you one of us? Prove it," Oriel demanded of Jon. The elder looked incredulously at Jon, bewildered by the sight of a night's watchman among wildlings. Under the scrutiny of so many gazes, Jon reluctantly drew long claw, hesitating as he lowered it toward the elder's neck. Ygritte, bow in hand, felt a surge of urgency. She could not comprehend why Jon, who had stood by her side, was now so ensnared by the Night's Watch oath. Did his allegiance not pale in comparison to their bond? "Do it," Ygritte urged, suppressing her inner terror, fearful that Jon might betray her at that moment. "I've said it before, he is still a crow," Oriel proclaimed triumphantly, ready to unmask Jon's true nature. The elder instantly grasped Jon's predicament, boldly urging, "Young man, strike swiftly." Jon gritted his teeth and raised his hand, but Longclaw did not descend. Frustrated, Ygritte loosed an arrow that struck the elder dead. Once a crow, always a crow. And with a mother crow watching over him, he will turn at the first opportunity. Oriel's words incited the wildlings to brandish their weapons. Tormund commanded, "Kill him." Ygritte, wishing to face the threat alongside Jon, found herself forcefully pushed aside. She had done enough for him already. Suddenly, a wildling let out a shriek, drawing everyone's attention to a black, pointed object piercing his chest. A dark creature emerged behind the wildling. Chapter 9. The name of the dog. As Ygritte rose from the ground, she instantly recognized the aberration. It was the same creature that had aided her escape when Jon had captured her. Upon witnessing the emergence of the alien creature, Jon felt an increased sense of confidence. Having endured a blow from its tail, he was acutely aware of the creature's formidable nature. However, he was perplexed by the absence of Rourke. Had he perhaps perished while scaling the wall? Oriel, undeterred by such musings, finally cornered Jon, revealing his true intentions. He could no longer contain his eagerness to slay the Night's Watchman who had usurped Ygritte. Thus, he brandished his sword and engaged Jon in combat. The alien flung the corpse of a wildling from its tail, emitting a chilling sound as it lunged towards the nearby wildlings. Terrified, the wildlings scattered. But their speed was no match for the alien. One by one, for wildlings were pierced through by its elongated tail. Tormund let out a fierce battle cry. Charging forward with his massive cleaver, having vanquished giants before, he would not falter in the presence of this dark monstrosity. He aimed a downward strike at the alien, which deftly evaded the blow. Rather than retaliate, the creature mockingly clasped its claws together, the golden sheen on the left side of its head shimmering faintly. Tormund shook off the rain-soaked hair and beard before lunging once more, swinging his cleaver downward. The alien merely shifted its form to avoid the strike with ease. Another horizontal slash met the same fate, as the alien retreated once more, extending its right claw in a beckoning gesture, as if to taunt him to come closer. With each failed attempt to land a blow, Tormund recalled the times he had teased wildling children, finding the situation before him eerily similar. "I am the bane of giants," he roared, recklessly throwing himself at the alien, determined to cleave the creature in two with his cleaver. Yet, his speed fell short. The alien simply used its tail to swat the weapon from his grasp. Unable to control his momentum, Tormund collided with the alien, the frigid touch of its form sending a shiver down his spine. "What manner of beast is this?" he thought, desperately attempting to wriggle free. But the alien's claws held him fast. As he gazed into the creature's maw, oozing an unknown liquid, despair washed over him, and he closed his eyes. Suddenly, a sharp arrow struck the alien, precisely piercing the golden area on its left head. The creature emitted a piercing scream and released Tormund, who fell to the ground as the alien clawed at the arrow embedded in its head. Compared to its other parts, the head was its most vulnerable area. Rourke, on the third level of the tower, empathized with Tormund, clutching his left eye as the dual board swiftly unfurled a wing panel. A second arrow was launched. Yet, in the next instant, the alien vanished in a flash of golden light. Tormund, seated on the ground, stared wide-eyed, utterly bewildered by this sleight of hand. After the alien's disappearance, Ygritte trained her arrow at the grappling Jon and Orell, her indecision interrupted as Tormund tackled her to the ground. "He is a crow. You must understand, you cannot serve the crows." Tormund assumed Ygritte intended to aid Jon. Suddenly, two wolves, one gray and the other silver, leapt forward, toppling the remaining wildlings. They were Bran Summer and Rickon's direwolf. After dispatching the two wildlings, the pair of wolves retreated into the ruins. In the first level of the tower, Sam held his breath, the recent appearance of the alien creature giving him hope for Jon's survival, only to be dismayed as it vanished after a sudden ambush. It was not like this when it was at Castle Black. "Where have you gone, Roke?" The battle between Jon and Orell escalated to a fever pitch. He used his long claws to disarm Orell's sword, then thrust his own blade into Orell's body. "Your suspicions were entirely correct," Jon declared to Orell. Yet, in the next instant, Orell's eyes rolled back, and through the power of shape-shifting, he managed to transfer his consciousness into a falcon soaring through the sky, under Orell's control. The falcon pecked several bloody holes into Jon's face with its sharp beak. After a hard-fought struggle, Jon finally dislodged the falcon and hastily mounted a horse, swiftly vanishing into the curtain of rain. Ygritte stared blankly at Jon's retreating figure, her heart swelling with anger and resentment. "I gave you everything, and you leave just like that?" She sprinted towards another horse, recklessly mounting it, only to be intercepted by Tormund. "We need to leave this place." He went to get far. The dark creature had vanished mysteriously and could very well reappear from the shadows. Moreover, this pursuit had consumed too much time. The Night's Watch would likely have dispatched a search party due to the stablemaster's disappearance. Originally set to hunt down a mere stableman, they had turned their wildling squad into a chaotic mess, even losing the shapeshifter Orell. If the other wildling leaders learned of this, where would the reputation of the Giant Slayer be? As Tormund and Ygritte departed, Sam began to shout, "Roke! Roke!" Roke emerged from the staircase, "Stop calling. I'm not dead yet." Seeing Roke's arrival, Sam felt a wave of relief wash over him as he hurried to the corner to help the crouched Gilly to her feet, then inquired, "Is your pet all right?" "I saw it get shot with an arrow." Roke shook his head and pointed toward the ceiling, leaving Sam and Gilly bewildered. "There are others above us who arrived before us. Those two direwolves were theirs." At Roke's words, Sam suddenly recalled Jon mentioning his family and the direwolves. A litter of 6 direwolves corresponded to the 5 Stark children of Winterfell, with the remaining red-eyed, white-furred direwolf given to Jon, the bastard. "Should we go up to greet them?" Sam proposed. Roke jested, "As long as they don't see you as a wildling." On the 5th level of the tower, as footsteps grew increasingly distinct, Bran and the others fixed their gaze on the staircase, fearful that wildlings would appear. Osha and Mira, the strongest members of the legacy team aside from Adu, drew their daggers, prepared to strike at any wildling that crossed their path. With foresight, Roke instructed Sam to take the lead. As the stout figure of Sam emerged from the staircase, Mira shouted and pushed him to the ground. "Don't kill me," Sam stammered. "I'm a member of the Night's Watch. I know Jon." At that moment, Gilly, clutching the infant, rushed out from the staircase, only to be stopped by Osha, who asked, "And who might you be?" "My name is Gilly, and this is Sam." Gilly quickly responded, "Please do not harm us." Upon seeing Gilly cradling a child, Osha and Mira lowered their guard, unaware that another figure had emerged at the staircase, none other than Luo Kai. Mira's nerves tensed once more as she brandished a dagger and lunged forward. "He is my friend," Sam shouted, but it was too late. The dagger was already thrust before Luo Kai. "Well," Luo Kai exclaimed in his native tongue, instinctively raising his left hand. The dual disc shimmering with golden light to deflect the oncoming strike. Luo Kai, who had led Sam upstairs, had overlooked one crucial aspect. Women are unpredictable. Mira awkwardly retreated beside her brother, while Jian fixed his gaze on Luo Kai's golden left eye and inquired, "Where are you headed?" Sam glanced at Luo Kai, noting his silence, and replied, "We are bound for the Black Castle. Initially, we sought refuge from the rain, but then we spotted wildlings and John outside." "That's my brother," the naive Rakin suddenly interjected. "I heard John mention you, which is why I came up to meet you." Jian, taken aback, asked, "You knew we were here all along?" Without a moment's hesitation, Sam replied, "It was Luo Kai. He told me there were people above, and mentioned that those two ice wolves belong to you. They are truly formidable, just as impressive as Luo Kai as pets." The incapacitated Bran understood the reference to pets. He had utilized the shapeshifter's ability to enter the body of the ice wolf, Summer, and had clearly seen its extraordinary form. "Do you also have an ice wolf?" Rakin inquired of Luo Kai, though at the tender age of 7, he likely believed that ice wolves were the most magnificent of pets. "Not an ice wolf." Luo Kai raised his left hand, revealing a corner of the dual disc as golden light flickered, and an alien creature materialized before all. It was an xenomorph. Little Rakin, startled by the sudden appearance of the creature, squealed and dashed behind Osha, while Mira and Jian stared in terror at the grotesque figure. Bran, however, maintained a semblance of calm. Luo Kai examined the creature's head, noting that the wound inflicted by an arrow had already healed. Sam and Jilly then learned the pet's true identity as part of the xenomorph species. "Does it have a name?" Rakin asked, noticing the creature's surprisingly docile demeanor as he peered out from behind Osha. Luo Kai remained silent, as most of the time he simply referred to it as the dog. After all, it could be rather clingy at times, much like a dog. Just then, a thunderclap echoed outside the tower, and an idea struck Sam. "How about calling it Shadow?" "Shadow is rather straightforward," someone remarked. Yet, Luo Kai found himself rather pleased with the name. However, the term dog would remain unchanged. As dusk descended, Osha lit a candle made of whale oil. Awakened, Adu unexpectedly embraced the xenomorph with enthusiasm, as if it were an old friend he had not seen in years. Luo Kai surmised that perhaps Adu's naivety rendered him innocent enough to perceive the terrifying xenomorph merely as a larger dog. In contrast to the affable demeanor of Adair, the two returned ice wolves trembled in the corner, acutely aware of the terror embodied by the nearly perfect creature known as the Other. Chapter 10. Farewells and the journey south. Bran, why don't you accompany us to the Black Castle? Once John escapes the wildlings' pursuit, he will surely return there. And you brothers can reunite, Sam suggested. He had always known that Jon's greatest concern was his family. When Jon learned of Eddard Stark's demise, he was even willing to defy his Night's Watch oath to avenge him. Had it not been for Sam and the Lord Commander persuading him otherwise, Jon might have already been fighting alongside his elder brother, Robb Stark. "We are heading north of the wall." This statement left Sam momentarily stunned. He could not fathom why a mere boy would wish to venture into such perilous territory. Roque, upon hearing Bran's declaration, was not surprised by the decision of the paralyzed youth. The Bran of the past had perished beneath the tower in Winterfell. Sam, however, remained unconvinced. He did not wish to see Bran become mere sustenance for wildlings or whites. "Bran, if you beheld what I have, you would certainly not desire to go north. There are stairs hewn into the southern side of the wall. Adair can help you ascend, and Roque's shadow can carry you as well. We should proceed directly to the Black Castle, which is the safest place." Gilly chimed in, "Come with us. The north is a realm of death." Before Bran could respond, Jojen stepped forward. "You have seen the army of whites and the others, have you not?" "How do you know?" Sam intended to elaborate on the matter of the others. Jojen continued, "The Night's Watch cannot halt the others, and the kings of Westeros and their armies are equally powerless." The sound of a lynx echoed from outside the tower, and Sam's gaze swept over the oblivious group. "And you believe you can stop the others?" Roque stifled a laugh. For Sam, the portly fellow always had a knack for delivering startling remarks at critical moments. Realizing all eyes were on him, Roque quickly interjected, "My apologies, please continue." Sam, exasperated, wondered whether Roque was truly his friend or a companion to this youthful group. "Please refrain from interrupting. Sam, I must go north. I have no other choice," Bran stated earnestly and resolutely. At this juncture, Roque moved alongside Sam to mediate. "Sam, they are not children. There is no need for your undue concern. Now, everyone, kindly gather together. I shall take a picture, lest we miss the chance to see one another again." "What is a picture?" Bran and Jojen exchanged puzzled glances but ultimately positioned themselves together. Adea cradled Bran, while Riken and Osha lined up in succession. Mira and Jojen, under Gilly's guidance, embraced closely, with the two ice wolves lying in the front. Sam, could you squeeze in a bit? Ah, yes, just hold Gilly. Everyone, stand still. A flash of light passed swiftly. And as Luo Kai gazed at the captured image, a twinge of regret filled his heart. If only it could be developed. He distributed the phones to everyone to view the results. Apart from Sam and Gilly, the others marveled at the device's ingenuity. With a golden left eye, a miraculous mobile device, and a compliant creature, who exactly is Luo Kai? After taking a photograph together, Bran grasped Rickon's hand and said, Rickon, you must accompany Osha to the last hearth, which is the domain of House Umber. They are loyal to House Stark and will undoubtedly protect you. As they traversed the wall in search of the three-eyed raven, Bran could not guarantee his own survival. His elder brother Robb was still engaged in battle, and Jon had taken up the Night's Watch. Should misfortune befall Robb and Jon, only his younger brother Rickon would be left to inherit Winterfell. As for his two sisters, one was imprisoned in King's Landing, while the other was missing. The Stark legacy must not be extinguished in their generation. I want to go with you. I am your brother. I can protect you. Little Rickon's tears flowed, unwilling to part from his brother. I must protect you first, Rickon, Bran replied, gazing at Osha, the wildling who had escaped from beyond the wall and had become his most trusted ally. You know the way to Last Hearth, do you not? Osha confidently responded. You Southerners, once you build a grand castle, you never move again. It's quite easy to find. We are not Southerners, Rickon exclaimed, directing his frustration at Osha before pleading with Bran, I do not want to leave you. Witnessing this poignant scene, Luo Kai approached them and said, what about including me? Sam then stood up, asking, aren't you coming back to the wall with me? Bran and the others were taken aback. Luo Kai was dressed in the black garb of the Night's Watch. Was he not one of them? It's freezing here. There's no way I am going to that black castle where I can't even have a hot bath. Do you know how long I've been wearing this? I wish I could take it off right now. Luo Kai's words left Sam speechless. Osha embraced Rickon and pointed at Luo Kai, saying, little warrior. He is the true Southerner. With the banter between Luo Kai and Sam, along with Osha's comforting presence, the tearful Rickon was successfully soothed. Indeed, children require reassurance. Only adults grasp the profound truths of life. The longer one lingers, the more difficult it becomes to part ways. Osha, being experienced, understood this well, and thus allowed Rickon to bid his final farewell. Little Rickon hugged Bran tightly, while Sam sought a comforting embrace from Luo Kai. Noticing the unpleasant odor emanating from Sam, Luo Kai remarked disdainfully, Sam, once you return to the wall, practice your swordplay and archery. Stop fixating solely on books, otherwise, if Gilly is bullied, how will you protect her? Upon hearing Luo Kai's words, Sam glanced at Gilly and nodded solemnly. Luo Kai did not hold out much hope. He knew Sam's strength lay in his intellect. Protect him well. He is my everything. Osha cast a glance at Bran as she led Rickon into the night. Luo Kai rubbed his eyes and followed after them. Traveling late into the night was not to his liking. The creature did not return to the dueling platform. Its arrow wounds had completely healed, leaving no trace of scars. The direwolf pup, eager to rush ahead of its master, was tugged back by the dog, which opened its mouth to bark a few times, as if to say, am I that terrifying? A proud wolf has been reduced to a mere husky by the cunning machinations of Luo Kai, who masquerades as an otherworldly figure. Ever since Robert met his demise at the tusks of a wild boar, the Seven Kingdoms have once more erupted into a war of succession. Robb Stark proclaims himself the king in the north, vowing to storm King's Landing to avenge his father, Eddard, and rescue his sister, Sansa, Renly Baratheon. As Robert's younger brother, naturally claims kingship at Storm's End. Similarly, Stannis, another brother, seeks to influence the fate of the Iron Throne, declaring himself king on Dragonstone. The final uprising comes from Balon Greyjoy of the Iron Islands, whose actions compel his son, Theon, to seize Winterfell without regard for past loyalties. This chain of events directly propels Bran and Rickon to flee northward. In King's Landing, the infamous Joffrey, a product of incest between Cersei and her brother Jaime, asserts his claim as the legitimate heir, being Robert's eldest son, alongside his younger brother Tommen and sister Myrcella. Robert remained blissfully unaware of the true nature of his lineage until his death, during the War of the Five Kings. Renly meets his end at the hands of Stannis' sorceress, Melisandre, thus eliminating one contender. Stannis himself fares poorly at the Battle of Blackwater, where his forces are severely weakened by the cunning Tyrion Lannister's use of wildfire, leaving him with little hope of claiming the Iron Throne. Observing the chaos, Balon Greyjoy expresses his desire to remain merely the king of the Iron Islands, dismissing the Iron Throne as unworthy of pursuit. At this juncture, the conflict unfolds primarily between Robb, the the king in the north, and Joffrey, representing House Lannister. The desire for vengeance for the murder of his father drives Robb relentlessly. Despite his remarkable military prowess leading the Northern Coalition to victory after victory, betrayal from Theon results in the fall of Winterfell, placing the entire North in precarious danger. Additionally, Robb's mother, Catelyn, makes a fateful decision to release Jaime, sowing discord within their ranks. Ultimately, Robb breaks his betrothal to the Frey family, choosing instead to marry a common woman, leaving the alliance fragile. In an effort to regain the Frey's favor, Robb arranges for his cousin Edmure to wed Rosalind. Unbeknownst to him, Lord Walder Frey conspires with Roose Bolton, plotting a treacherous assassination during the wedding, awaiting Robb's arrival. Amidst laughter and celebration, Robb, his wife, Catelyn, and his loyal bannermen fall into a pool of blood. This infamous Red Wedding signifies the conclusion of the War of the Five Kings. 3 days have passed since the Red Wedding, and Roke, Osha, and Rickon finally approach the vicinity of the last hearth. Shall we proceed? Rickon inquires from atop the direwolf, while Osha casts a questioning glance at Roke. Throughout their journey, the master and servant have grown less wary of the golden-eyed stranger. Hold on a moment. Roke calls out to them, there are matters I must share. What is it? Weren't you just clamoring for a hot bath? Osha jests, still unaware that the castle ahead is no longer the hearth of House Umber. There are certain matters I must convey to you. Luo Kai crouched before Rickon and revealed that your brother Robb, along with your mother and uncles, recently perished in the vicinity of the twins. Young Rickon was taken aback by this abrupt revelation, his face turning pale, leaving him speechless. How did you come to know this? Osha swiftly took Rickon aside, for not only could a child not withstand such news, but she herself was equally struck with astonishment. How had Luo Kai acquired this information? Throughout their journey, she had not witnessed him receiving any ravens. Now, the entire North was likely granted to some lord, and if they ventured forth recklessly, they could very well be captured and handed over to the Lannisters or fall into the hands of some sadistic fiend. The fiend Luo Kai referred to was, of course, Ramsay Bolton, the illegitimate son of Roose Bolton, who was, in certain respects, even more ruthless than his father. So, shall we return to the Black Castle? Osha inquired, her tone laced with skepticism. Luo Kai shook his head, yearning for a thrill. Chapter 11. All the circumstances were akin to Luo Kai's recollections. The North had indeed been bestowed upon Roose Bolton by the Lannisters' Tywin. Currently, Last Hearth was under the dominion of House Umber, who had sworn fealty to House Bolton. As night fell, in a forest near Last Hearth, the weary Rickon lay asleep upon the belly of a dire wolf, while Luo Kai and Osha conferred around a campfire, devising their plan to seize the castle. Following the Red Wedding, the members of House Umber had nearly been exterminated, with only a few held as hostages, leaving Last Hearth with minimal defense. Do you believe that the two of us, along with the Wraith, can conquer that grand estate? Osha asked. Luo Kai confidently replied, no. One is sufficient. Osha was taken aback. One? Are you referring to yourself, or the Wraith? At that moment, she suddenly realized that the Wraith, which had gone to gather firewood, had not returned for quite some time. Osha snapped to attention, casting a glance at Luo Kai, who bore an expression reminiscent of Bran controlling Hodder in the tower. Could it be that he was indeed the shapeshifter that Jojen spoke of? To prevent a repeat of their previous misstep, Luo Kai's consciousness was nearly entirely merged with the Wraith, though he refrained from controlling the dire wolf, as the primal consciousness was far more stable than his novice handling. In the main tower of Last Hearth's castle, Hoat gazed despondently at the message inscribed on the parchment. In order to safeguard his nephew, the great Jon Umber, he had no choice but to pledge loyalty to Roose Bolton. Yet, following the Red Wedding, the old Wyman had not released him, instead sending a raven to humiliate Hoat. The uncle could endure much, but with no resources or allies, he was left with little choice but to accept his fate. Just as Hoat incinerated the parchment in his hand, the Wraith silently appeared behind him. A drop of clear, viscous fluid fell from the Wraith's mouth, landing upon Hoat's gray hair. The old man, puzzled, reached up to touch it, suspecting a leak. However, the sticky sensation did not resemble water. Hoat slowly raised his gaze, encountering the gleaming black chin of the Wraith, sending a shiver down his spine. What manner of creature was this? Before he could cry out, the Wraith embraced his emaciated form and vanished into the desolate castle. Osha stifled a yawn, while Luo Kai maintained his expression for an extended period, showing no extraneous movement apart from the occasional blink. This must be the virtue of a shapeshifter, she mused, curiously waving her hand before him. Is it amusing? Luo Kai suddenly inquired, prompting Osha to quickly retract her hand. At that moment, a faint rustle emanated from the darkness, seemingly accompanied by the groans of an elderly man. Osha cautiously drew her dagger, yet Luo Kai advised her, put it away, our guest has arrived. No sooner had he spoken than the shapeshifter appeared, cradling a bewildered hoster before them. Who is he? Osha questioned, puzzled as to why the shapeshifter had brought back an old man. He must be the master of Last Hearth, Luo Kai said, gently extracting the shaken hoster from the shapeshifter's embrace, and politely added, I apologize for summoning you at such an hour. Who are you? Hoster, having never experienced such excitement in his life, thought that upon being embraced by the shapeshifter, he was being punished by the old gods for betraying House Stark in favor of House Lannister. Osha, cradling the sleeping Rickon, addressed Hoster, he is a Stark of Winterfell. You must recognize the direwolf, my lord. Hoster glanced at the furry creature, indeed a direwolf's breed. We have no ill intentions in asking for your hospitality. We merely seek refuge for a while. I trust this will not be too burdensome, Luo Kai stated, observing Hoster's golden and black eyes. He understood that the young man before him had exerted considerable effort, and it was unlikely that he sought merely a place to stay. With the ominous black creature present, it was Hoster who should be pleading. The direwolf, the sleeping boy, Rickon Stark. A glimmer of realization flickered in Hoster's murky eyes, accompanied by an almost imperceptible smile. He comprehended the young man's true desires. Osha, holding Rickon, watched as Luo Kai walked alongside Hoster, a sense of past unfamiliarity creeping back into her thoughts. Within the fortress of Last Hearth, Luo Kai reclined nude in the bath, while the shapeshifter floated in the opposite tub. His mobile phone and the clothes he had traversed with were set aside in a basket designated for new garments. As for the foul-smelling black leather coat, he feigned disdain. However, he was grateful for the warmth it had provided him in the wilderness. Thus, upon entering the fortress, he had unceremoniously tossed it into the fire. Do not drink the water, and if you dare leave any unidentifiable fluids in there, I swear I shall claw you. The shapeshifter, feeling wronged, lifted its head from the tub, its drool being neither corrosive nor particularly pleasant, yet nutritionally comparable to water. If only someone could massage my shoulders, Luo Kai thought, drowsily drifting off under a warm, damp towel. Mimicking him, the shapeshifter submerged itself entirely in the water, though it too required air. Its endurance far surpassed that of a human. As if summoned by thought alone, Osha appeared at the edge of the tub, seating herself behind Luo Kai and expertly beginning to knead his shoulders. Although a wildling, her time as an unwilling maid in Winterfell had trained her well in the art of southern hospitality. Her practiced hands roused Luo Kai from his slumber, and upon realizing that it was Osha who was massaging him, he hastily covered his vital areas. How could it be you? Luo Kai awkwardly remarked. The alien emerged from the depths of the pool, and Luo Kai, observing its sharp claws, realized they were indeed unsuitable for a gentle touch. Osha, fixated on Luo Kai's figure, abruptly stood up, intent on disrobing. Luo Kai quickly exclaimed, What are you doing? Bathing. Just as the situation threatened to reveal what ought not to be seen, the alien splashed out of the pool, leaping towards Osha and plunging her into the water behind. Luo Kai, carrying Osha on his back, stated, I have a cleanliness obsession. You may use that pool for your wash. Osha, unperturbed, discarded her last article of clothing, tossing it aside, but she was taken aback by Luo Kai's apparent indifference despite his mature stature. Casting her gaze over the alien's sleek, obsidian body, she seemed to comprehend something profound. The trio, 2 individuals and 1 alien, remained in the pool for a considerable time, silently sharing an unspoken understanding. Once the water had cooled entirely, Luo Kai stealthily rose to dress, only to hear Osha say, Luo Kai, as long as you do not harm Rickon, I shall not impede your actions. Osha was earnest regarding Bran and Rickon. Pausing mid-dressing, Luo Kai, bare from the waist up, gazed at the flickering reflection of the torch in the pool, assuring her, I am aware of my limits, rest assured. Osha regarded his silhouette for quite some time before mimicking the alien and submerging herself in the water. With Luo Kai's response, her anxious heart eased slightly. Having reached a clandestine agreement with Hoster, Luo Kai naturally became the de facto agent behind the scenes of the Last Hearth, freeing Osha and Rickon from their perilous plight. Apart from Hoster, no one in the Last Hearth knew of their true identities. Days later, Luo Kai's message to the Black Castle received a reply, revealing that Sam and Gilly had returned safely. Bran and his companions had also traversed the wall without incident. Jon, who bore several arrows in his body, was rescued upon his return to the Black Castle. Everything appeared to conclude satisfactorily. However, Luo Kai understood that these were merely appetizers preceding the tragedy's main course. The situation in Westeros had gradually clarified following the desolation of the War of the Five Kings, while across the Narrow Sea, Essos was not to be outdone. Ever since Daenerys Targaryen had used her dragons to seize 8,000 Unsullied in Astapor, liberating the slave city in the process, she had led her army of Unsullied and the newly recruited Sons of the Harpy to conquer Ukai. Now, the once glorious Mother of Dragons had set her sights on the pyramid city of Meereen. On the edge of a cliff, Daenerys leisurely stroked the head of her eldest dragon, Drogon, who had grown to 8 or 9 meters long, his head as thick as Daenerys' own body. In the sky, her second son, Regal, and her third son, Viserion, playfully tossed a goat between them, reveling in their joy. Yet, in the next moment, the two young dragons inadvertently failed to catch the goat, which fell with a thud onto a large rock in front of Daenerys and Drogon. Drogon swiftly seized the bloodied goat, and Regal and Viserion hastily descended to contest for it. Daenerys extended her hand, hoping to teach her children to share, to learn the virtue of selflessness. Impatient, Drogon turned around and snapped his jaws, startling Daenerys, who swiftly withdrew her hand. "Your dragon is rather unruly." A woman with braided hair appeared behind Daenerys. Her hair was not just purple, her eyes mirrored the same hue, while her fair skin stood in stark contrast. "Do you require assistance in training him?" The three brothers, previously engaged in a tussle over a goat's carcass, abruptly redirected their attention towards the purple-haired woman, growling menacingly. Daenerys' heart raced as she stood and addressed the woman. "Ball? They are still young. Rebellion is to be expected. They will mature in time." The lightning in Bael's eyes remained undiminished. "If the children misbehave, a little shock will suffice." Daenerys felt a pang of anxiety. The brothers, observing the flickering purple energy at Bael's fingertips, began to retreat slowly, their fierce roars turning timid as fear took hold. First, the youngest, Viserion, soared into the sky, followed closely by his brother, Regal. The eldest, Drogon, unwilling to concede, opened his maw wide, preparing to showcase his burgeoning dragon fire to the woman before him, hoping to turn the tide in his favor. While, witnessing Drogon's fearless advance, couldn't help but smile slightly. The little one was indeed courageous. As the dragon fire erupted forth, a purple lightning serpent slithered into the flames, and in the blink of an eye, the fire dissipated entirely. The serpentine energy surged towards Drogon and gracefully leapt into his mouth. A pained whimper escaped Drogon as he convulsed and collapsed to the ground. Regal and Viserion, witnessing their brother's plight, fled towards the distant sea without a backward glance. They were not retreating in fear. Rather, they understood that to appease the formidable Ball, they needed to return with offerings of sufficient sincerity, for she delighted in cooking. Chapter 12. That someone Ball and Daenerys encountered one another in the Crimson Wasteland, where Ball had no memories of her own, save for a name and the ability to command lightning. As they spent time together, Ball found herself increasingly captivated by Daenerys' fervent desire to change the world, evolving from strangers to intimate confidants. While the world revered the mother of dragons, few recognized the terror that accompanied the purple-haired woman by her side. "Drogon, do not let me witness you shouting at Daenerys again," Ball admonished with a gentle touch upon the dragon's robust head, her expression brimming with mirth. Yet, Ball secretly hoped for Drogon's occasional defiance, for it provided her the opportunity to rightfully discipline the young dragon. Disciplining must commence early. Even dragons are not exempt. Drogon defiantly lifted his head, his large, expressive eyes gazing at Ball as he emitted a few reluctant growls. "Wretched woman, you shall regret it when I grow up. Khaleesi, we must set forth." Jorah Mormont called out as he approached from the hillside. He was the son of Old Bear, known as the Great Bear, a man of the Undulls. This passionate man had once clandestinely trafficked slaves to support his wife's extravagant lifestyle. When the truth came to light, he was sentenced to death by Eddard Stark, the protector of the North. In his lifetime devoted solely to love, Jorah fled with his wife to the city of Lys. His wife, deeply appreciative of his sacrifices, squandered his wealth, leaving him burdened with a considerable debt. Ultimately, to alleviate Jorah's burdens, she took up with the Prince of Lys, which resulted in the annulment of his debts, under the condition that Jorah would part ways with his understanding spouse. Subsequently, Jorah traversed several free cities, seeking redemption by acting as a spy for the Master of Whisperers, Varys, keeping a watchful eye on Daenerys Targaryen and her brother. However, Jorah found himself once again surrendering to love, kneeling beneath the skirts of the Mother of Dragons. "Barristan, take care of Drogon for me." Daenerys uttered these words before departing with Jorah and the Unsullied. Jorah glanced back at Barristan, who had managed to tame Drogon in a way even the Mother of Dragons could not accomplish. Drogon whimpered and lifted his head, while Barristan looked at him with an innocent demeanor, his delicate hands gently caressing the dragon's scales. A spark of violet energy inadvertently slipped from his fingertips, causing Drogon to spring up from the ground and, with a shaky flap of his wings, ascend into the air, mistakenly believing himself safe. Drogon let out a roar directed at Barristan and below before soaring towards the distant sea. "Wretched woman, you'll regret it when I grow up." Daenerys granted Barristan the utmost freedom, allowing her to go wherever she pleased at any time. This, perhaps, epitomizes the depth of their sisterly bond. Alone, Barristan gazed toward the sea that Drogon had flown towards, her violet eyes revealing a hint of confusion. "Who am I, truly?" The sea breeze tousled her purple strands, and she instinctively murmured, Barbados, suddenly jolted from her reverie. Barristan remained unaware of the thunderous sigil forming behind her. Far away in Westeros, Rhaegar lay on his grand bed, luxuriating in the warmth of a cashmere blanket. In his slumber, he remained oblivious to the dual disc on his left wrist quietly unfolding its second wing. Violet light emerged, gradually enveloping his entire left hand. In his dreams, Rhaegar scratched at his numb hand, while an aberration guarding the bedside sensed something amiss and instinctively lunged at him. In an instant, the violet light vanished, and Rhaegar was gone. The aberration, having missed its target, crashed onto the bed, emitting a furious wail that echoed throughout the castle, instilling fear in all who heard it. Osha was the first to arrive at Rhaegar's door, accompanied by Reek. Hoster also arrived on the scene, exchanging a glance with Osha as they prepared to enter. With a thunderous crash, the door was suddenly shattered, and the aberration bolted out, crying out like a lost child, before disappearing down the corridor. Hoster sensed trouble and rushed into the room, finding Rhaegar's absence alarming. He suspected that Rhaegar had done something to provoke the aberration's fury. Now, the situation seemed increasingly complex. Hoster recalled that he was still ostensibly the acting lord of Last Hearth, and the aberration's brazen exit from the castle in broad daylight could easily incite panic. Whether servant or soldier, the emergence of a dark creature from Last Hearth would surely not remain a secret. The news spread rapidly from one person to 10, and from 10 to 1,000. Most alarmingly, the Burton family, known for their nefarious reputation, resided in close proximity to the castle of the Last Hearth. The Burtons, bearing the grotesque banner of skinning, were indeed a congregation of deviants, and the presence of a monstrous entity could likely summon an illegitimate offspring. Meanwhile, Hadar, the head of the Amber family, might be inclined to sacrifice Rhaeken for the sake of Hearth's interests. Osha, aware of the repercussions stemming from Roke's disappearance, discreetly led Rhaeken back to their chamber, preparing to flee the castle. Yet, her efforts fell short. Hadar had already dispatched men to seal off the entire Hearth. Ultimately, Osha and Rhaeken found themselves under house arrest. With the threat eliminated, Hothar's agreement with Roke amounted to mere verbal assurances. Roke, in the depths of slumber, was jolted awake, bewildered by the sight of a striking woman with purple hair. Had he, Roke, traversed into another realm? Wall turned, her expression one of astonishment as she inquired, Who are you? Her voice was both innocent and alluring, her attire seemingly loose yet curvaceous, and her violet eyes sparkled with a divine light, blending authority with an enchanting allure. Roke's heart raced, overwhelmed by her presence. Having accompanied the Mother of Dragons for so long, Ball had encountered myriad gazes. Yet this combination of gold and black was indeed rare. Recalling an incident in Quarrels, where a corpulent man had audaciously proposed marriage to the Mother of Dragons while suggesting Ball take on the role of mistress, she had promptly reduced him to a frail shadow of his former self. Have you seen enough? Ball suddenly bent down, conjuring a purple ball of lightning beside her. Yet, she failed to realize that her movements were too expansive. Roke, lying on the ground, caught a glimpse of the spectacle, and his vitality surged. Overwhelmed, Roke finally recognized his own indecent behavior and attempted to rise for an introduction, only to see the lightning sphere drifting toward him. The third ball might emit light. Roke hastily pressed his hands against the ground to retreat, astonished that this beautiful older sister possessed magical abilities. Wasn't this tantamount to bullying the innocent? As he backed away, he called upon the aberration through his dual disc on his left wrist, yet received no response. Resolute, he raised his left hand and made a swift gesture toward the lightning sphere. Boom! The sphere erupted in a cacophony of thunder, its brilliant light enveloping Roke in an instant. Wall had not intended to take Roke's life. She merely wished to see him retreat in fear. However, the ensuing scene was unexpected. Once the lightning dissipated, aside from his newly acquired garments being singed and tattered, and his dark hair slightly crisped, Roke suffered little harm. Nevertheless, he succumbed to unconsciousness. Ball, my lady, the queen has sent me to summon you. A servant girl named Missandei, who attended the Mother of Dragons, suddenly appeared. He is. Ball interjected, Tell Dany to depart ahead. I shall join you with her dragon. Missandei nodded in agreement, her gaze briefly sweeping over Roke before she exited. Once she departed, Ball, looking down upon Roke, asked, Do you wish to experience that again, or will you rise now? With the Fade crumbling, Roke scrambled to his feet, pleading, No, please. I do not wish to be shocked again. Whatever you say, my lady Ball, I shall comply. Ball was amused by the words of Locke. She had not anticipated that he possessed such perceptive skills. Yet, within Locke's heart, a tempest raged as he recalled the conversation between Ball and Missandei. Daenerys, along with the dragons, apart from the Mother of Dragons. He could scarcely conceive of anyone more suitable. When had the Mother of Dragons ever had a magical elder sister named Ball by her side? As he touched his electrically charged hair, Locke suddenly remembered his phone and hurriedly rummaged through his clothes, fervently hoping it had not been damaged. However, despite his thorough search, he could not locate it. Is this what you're looking for? Ball inquired, holding a black object. Indeed, it was Locke's phone, presumably dropped when he had retreated. That's mine. Please return it, Lady Ball. Are you certain? Their eyes, one purple and the other golden, met, and Locke promptly capitulated. Consider it a gift. Ball was quite pleased. She was not one to covet others' possessions, but she found this exquisite item irresistible. As compensation, Locke's earlier lewd behavior was forgiven. At that moment, the three dragons returned, each clutching their own prize. The third brother, Viserion, had caught a small lamb. The second brother, Regal, had captured a half-grown cow. The eldest, Drogon, had outdone them all, having actually gone into the sea to catch a fish, a moderately sized shark. Locke observed the descending dragons, assured that he had not traversed time again, but had inexplicably arrived across the narrow sea in Essos. The three dragons deposited their spoils before Ball, who gazed at the still lively cow, sheep, and fish with satisfaction. So, Ball was indeed formidable? Locke felt fortunate that Ball had not unleashed her full wrath with that lightning orb. A more formidable scene unfolded. Ball, producing a small knife from an undisclosed location, deftly skinned and dismembered the lamb and cow, and the lively shark met a similar fate. With a splash of blood on her face, Ball turned to Locke and said, "Hey, could you fetch me some firewood? Don't they breathe fire?" The three fierce heads turned in unison towards Locke. At your service. Chapter 13. Say cheese for the camera. Although Ball relished cooking, her culinary skills remained limited to merely preparing food. After much effort, Locke managed to find some broken branches and dead wood on the barren mountain. He had previously contemplated making a discreet escape. After struggling a few steps, he reconsidered. First, Locke had lost his connection with the alien creature, leaving him alone and unarmed, making it easy to perish in the orderly yet chaotic land of Essos. Even if he were fortunate enough to survive, the possibility of being captured and sold into slavery was not out of the question. Delicate and youthful, he would undoubtedly attract the attention of certain noble lords. Secondly, the woman named Ball seemed to be a commendable companion. Although he was uncertain why she was associated with the mother of dragons, even Missandei and the dragon hatchlings held her in high regard. So following her should ensure his safety and basic needs. He was already gathering firewood, a lamb, a cow, and a shark. Surely, they would not deny him even a bone. It seems to be burnt. That particular part has never been grilled. My dear Ball, how could you have discarded the shark fin? The entirety of the shark is rendered ineatable save for that one piece. Under Ball's chaotic influence during the meal, the sumptuous feast of beef and lamb ultimately found its way into the bellies of three dragons. Meanwhile, Luo Kai clutched the blackened shark fin with both hands, struggling to swallow it under Ball's watchful gaze. How does it taste? Ball, observing Luo Kai's oil-smeared mouth, was filled with anticipation. Previously, all the dishes I prepared were consumed by those little rascals, Zhuge and his companions, leaving no chance for Danny to partake. You are the first. It seems that Ball has never even tasted her own creations. The cooking was slightly off, the flavor a tad bland, Luo Kai pretended to critique, indicating that Ball still has ample room for improvement. Given time, she shall undoubtedly become an exceptional chef, provided I guide her. As he spoke these words, Luo Kai distinctly felt a pang of conscience. Flattered by the compliments, Ball could not help but swell with pride. If dragons savored her cuisine, surely humans would follow suit. Next time, she must reserve some for Danny to try. In that case, you shall remain by my side. Once I master my culinary skills, you may take your leave. Ball's culinary aspirations swelling within her as she eagerly awaited her dear friend's praise. By the way, what is your name? Luo Kai replied, I am called Luo Kai. Ball nodded, turning to the trio of satiated dragons and pointing at Luo Kai, saying, remember this man named Luo Kai. Now, your mother awaits. Hurry back to her side. Zhuge was the first to take flight, while the other two brothers circled around Ball before following suit. Truly, Lady Ball is adept in every regard, even taming mighty dragons. Luo Kai remained steadfast in his intentions, determined to cling to this opportunity. Ball unexpectedly leaned in closer to Luo Kai, her violet eyes revealing a hint of confusion. Luo Kai recoiled, not wishing to be shocked again. Why do I sense a familiarity about you? Ball inquired. Luo Kai lowered his gaze, unable to meet her eyes. Perhaps it is because I just bathed. You know, if one does not bathe, one can become quite odorous. Lady Ball must frequently bathe. Hence the kinship she feels with someone who also enjoys cleanliness. A serious fabrication, yet Ball was utterly convinced. Ball then produced her phone, asking, what is this device for? Luo Kai replied, it is called a mobile phone, though I am unsure if it still functions. Ball weighed the phone in her hands before passing it back to Luo Kai. How does one use it? Luo Kai took the phone, pressed, and held the power button, and the screen illuminated shortly thereafter. Not broken. Observing the battery status turning full, Luo Kai could hardly believe his eyes as he glanced at Ball. A beauty-branded power bank? Ball gazed curiously at the glowing screen, completely unfamiliar with such technology. Coupled with Luo Kai's presence, she began to ponder whether this sudden appearance might be linked to her lost memories. Look. Seizing the opportunity, Luo Kai snapped a photo of Ball lost in thought and presented it to her, saying, "It can capture your most beautiful side." Ball stared at her reflection on the phone, utterly bewildered by how it achieved such a feat previously. Out of concern for his phone's battery life, Luo Kai would conserve power, only turning it on to capture a fleeting moment with a photograph when necessary. However, with the advent of Ball, this humanoid power bank, he felt liberated to indulge. As he tapped the blue and white icon, a familiar female voice emanated from his device. Could it speak? Ball's curiosity was piqued. How could such a diminutive box contain a person? Perhaps it was magic? Although there was no internet connection, the software still housed the songs Luo Kai had downloaded, and he had long cultivated the habit of saving his favorite music. He quickly selected a track, and as the piano's prelude resonated, a soulful male voice followed. "What do you think? Is it nice?" Sharing his cherished music made Luo Kai lose himself in the moment. Ball, silently absorbing the music, cast a deep glance at Luo Kai before turning to walk up the hillside path. "Does that mean it's not to your liking? Shall I choose another?" Luo Kai hurriedly paused the music and chased after her. For the sake of his personal safety and future entertainment, he was unwilling to relinquish Ball, the elder sister figure. "Wait, when you see Danny, just greet her as your majesty." Ball extended her hand towards the approaching Luo Kai. "I will explain that you are to be my musician and chef from now on." Luo Kai hesitated momentarily before handing the phone to Ball, understanding her intent. Ball smiled knowingly. Soon, she would engage in pursuits far more delightful than cooking. The Purity Legion and the Second Son's mercenary group journeyed toward Meereen, while 3 dragons soared above Daenerys Targaryen, filling her with pride and satisfaction. The day the dragons fully matured would coincide with her crossing the narrow sea to reclaim the Iron Throne. Missandei, standing beside the Dragon Queen, spoke of Ball and Luo Kai. Upon hearing this, Daenerys smiled faintly. Her dear sister had finally awakened to her feelings. "Daario Naharis, your Ball has found a man." On a dark horse, the tall and handsome commander of the Second Sons, Daario, wore an expression of mixed emotions before abruptly turning his steed. "Your Majesty, are you certain he won't take that man as head?" Missandei whispered. "No one can harm the one Ball wishes to protect." As the group traversed a rocky hillside, Daenerys and her companions came upon a grim signpost constructed from corpses. Yura explained, "From here to Meereen, there is a marker every mile." Daenerys suppressed her simmering anger and calmly inquired, "How many miles remain to Meereen?" 160, Your Majesty." The Dragon Queen fixed her gaze on the signpost, and Missandei could sense her fury mounting. The elderly Balisar, well aware of Daenerys' aversion to slavery, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, I will send men ahead to bury them, so you need not witness this." "No, I wish to see their faces before they are buried," Daenerys responded, eyeing the female slaves hanging from the signpost. "Their sun-scorched bodies desiccated. Remove their collars before burying them." Daario, brimming with righteous fury, retraced his steps and eventually spotted Ball and Luo Kai at the rear of the procession. The two displayed their closeness unabashedly, their hands cradling a black box as they engaged in light-hearted conversation. Upon witnessing this scene, Daario's mind became instantly muddled. As the leader of the Second Sons, he had fought alongside Yura to conquer Luo Kai for Daenerys, not for power, but in hopes that the violet-haired beauty beside her would cast a glance his way. Yet, such achievements did not even merit a shared dance at a banquet. At this moment, Luo Kai, who was teaching Ball to navigate her phone, felt a twinge of discomfort. He lifted his gaze, and his eyes met Daario's in an instant. A menacing aura. Who were this portly man and the woman accompanying him? And that grotesque creature, why was it embracing you? Ball, having learned to view the album, merely glanced at Daario before redirecting her attention back to her phone. "My friend." Luo Kai thought anxiously as he observed Daario approaching on horseback, sensing that this handsome man was headed straight for him. Could it be that? Unexpectedly, when Daario reached the two, his gaze fixated on Ball. "Miss Ball, the Queen has sent me to escort you." Ball replied without lifting her head, casually mimicking a pose from the photos as she wrapped her arm around Luo Kai's neck, snapping a selfie with a click. Daario clenched his fists, his face contorting with anger. Sensing the tension, Luo Kai attempted to extricate himself, only to find Ball tightening her grip around his neck. At that moment, he recalled who this face belonged to, the one who had barged in during Daenerys' bath to present a severed head. Daario Naharis. Yet, the current situation bore little resemblance to infatuation with Daenerys. It seemed rather like devotion to Ball instead. How curious. One using me as a shield and the other viewing me as a rival. Since they have come to me, I shall not hold back. Luo Kai wrapped his arms around Ball's waist, unabashedly pressing his face against hers. One word, chillingly delicate. Ball was taken aback by Luo Kai's audacity. With a gentle pinch of her left fingertips, she effortlessly sank them into his flesh. An invisible current surged through him. Luo Kai's eyes widened in shock, his body trembling uncontrollably. Yet, in his stubbornness, he refused to release his hold around her waist despite the electrifying sensation. Ball turned her face slightly to shoot him a look. As if to say, you have some nerve. Luo Kai struggled to muster a smile, mumbling in his native tongue, eggplant. With a click, they both released their grip simultaneously. Perhaps this was why Luo Kai had taught Ball to say eggplant while taking pictures. Seeing the two separate, Dario's expression softened slightly as he extended his hand from atop his horse. Miss Ball, please come up. However, Ball turned to Luo Kai and said, you go first. Numb all over, Luo Kai staggered to the horse's side, feebly extending his right hand. Pull me up. Chapter 14. The second summoning? The three shared a single horse, with Luo Kai becoming the filling in the sandwich. It was rather exhilarating, though a bit cramped. Ball behind him kept poking Luo Kai's back, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Each poke perfectly measured. Meanwhile, Dario's expression fluctuated. This man named Luo Kai was constantly pressing against him, and if it weren't for the fact that Ball, whom he admired, was still on the horse, he would have made it a point to throw Luo Kai off as a true man would. The mountain path was rugged, and with the added weight of three, the horse beneath them clearly struggled, rendering the advancing convoy ahead nearly invisible. Dario remarked, Miss Ball, we must hasten our pace and swiftly reach the queen. 3 of us are too heavy. Ball casually pressed her phone against Roke's back, not bothering to lift her gaze as she replied, so, do you have a solution? Quite the tech-savvy individual. Perhaps I should walk, allowing you two to bond a little more. Dario, unable to bear the thought of Ball dismounting, had originally intended for Roke to walk instead. Roke, feeling the pressure from both sides, suddenly interjected, let us not quarrel, I shall dismount. Before Ball and Dario could respond, Roke jumped off the horse, immediately bending over to vomit on the ground, a mixture of charred black and white substance spilling forth. He felt a sudden clarity, his breathing becoming notably easier. Never provoke a woman, nor a man in heat. Observing Roke's disheveled state, Dario pondered if he had overestimated him. At that moment, Ball also leapt down from the horse, extending her phone to Roke, which unlocked only to return to a black screen. A more alert Roke took the phone and scanned his face, then returned it to Ball. Did you not say a password was needed for unlocking? Roke's mind suddenly became clear, and he stammered as he gazed at her stern visage. Ultimately, unable to withstand the enchanting glow of Ball's eyes, he divulged the truth. Ball's expression softened, returning to one of innocent calm. Yet internally, she felt a surge of anger and discomfort for being deceived by Roke. Demonstrating both the password and facial recognition, Roke obediently stood by, watching her operate the phone. Oblivious to the fact that this scenario mirrored a girlfriend checking her boyfriend's phone, the innocent Roke remained unaware. Dario, perched upon his horse, watched the two with a tinge of jealousy. Unable to endure any longer, he leapt down and, in a sudden motion, lifted Roke and placed him onto the horse's back. Since Roke is unwell, he shall ride alone, Dario proclaimed, delivering a swift smack to the horse's rear. Caught off guard, Roke nearly was thrown off, but fortunately, his prior experience with riding peculiar creatures rendered this small horse a trivial challenge. After gaining some distance, Roke's left wrist gleamed with golden light, and the dual disc appeared. He attempted to establish a connection with the creature, yet received no response. Suspecting the distance was too great, he then noticed the circular emblem of the Thunder's triad on the second wing of the dual disc, instantly recognizing it as the symbol of the Electro-Archon. Barbados. Roke suddenly turned to look at Ball, who was riding alongside Dario, and she, sensing his gaze, met his eyes. In that moment of connection, Roke realized the reason for his abrupt arrival in another continent lay within the emblem on the dual disc and Ball herself. Ball, also known as the Electro-Sovereign, was the former god of eternity, and alongside the current god, Raiden Shogun, they had triumphed in the Archon War. The two sisters, embodying both intellect and might, did not imply that Ball lacked strength. After all, she was a goddess, albeit slightly weaker compared to other elemental deities. Luo Kai withdrew his gaze, fixating intently on the threefold lightning pattern on the wing disc. If the design signified a summoning, did it not imply that Ball was the second summoned entity? He could not help but cover his mouth, stifling a bashful smile from being noticed by others. Raising his left hand high, the second wing of the dual disc unfurled. The threefold lightning pattern instantly ignited with a violet glow, only to be swiftly enveloped by a golden radiance. Suddenly, Ball, who had been strolling, halted, emanating an aura of overwhelming power, surrounded by shimmering arcs of purple lightning, causing her phone to tumble to the ground. Dario, who had been whispering flirtatious words beside Ball, was taken aback. It was the first time he had witnessed such a transformation in her. Miss Ball? At that moment, Ball sensed a tremendous force surging from all directions, inexorably drawing her in. Harnessing her full strength, the crackling arcs of lightning darted chaotically, and Dario, unable to evade, was struck by one that fortuitously lashed against his sword at his waist. He was sent hurtling against the nearby mountainside, losing consciousness. Finally comprehending why Daenerys had warned him not to provoke Ball, thunder roared as a bolt of lightning cleaved through the sky. The previously clear heavens were suddenly shrouded in ominous clouds, with a chaotic wind whipping up sand and debris, disrupting everything in its vicinity. At the forefront of the army, Daenerys, mounted on a white steed, instinctively paused to gaze toward the point where the lightning had struck. Yura approached, stating, "Your Grace, it appears rain is imminent. We should halt our march and seek shelter from the impending downpour." Daenerys nodded in agreement, and Yura promptly rode off to command the troops on the mountain path to take cover and rest. Luo Kai was startled by the tempestuous weather, questioning how summoning a creature could invoke such a spectacle. Ball's loose garments remained unruffled, as if the chaos surrounding her was of no concern. The crackling arcs of lightning coalesced into numerous violet orbs, each adorned with the threefold lightning pattern. Simultaneously, Ball, resisting the strange gravitational pull, ascended step by step upon a staircase forged from thunder. Once more, the sky unleashed thick bolts of white lightning, some even striking toward Ball, who was encircled by the violet orbs. The clash of white and purple intertwined, extinguishing and then re-emerging. Ball's eyes, aglow with violet light, flickered with a hint of gold as she peered down at Luo Kai from midair. Her expression shifted from indifference to fervor, complex emotions swirling within. The staircase of lightning descended swiftly, connecting the heavens to Luo Kai. The violet orbs multiplied, and the descending white lightning grew increasingly robust, each one aimed squarely at Ball. Her pace quickened, transforming from a stroll into a sprint, as she became a serpentine apparition of purple and white, entwined with the violet orbs and the incessant white lightning cascading upon her. Luo Kai, witnessing this spectacle, felt a shiver run down his spine. Attempting to retract his dual disc, but was helplessly drawn forward by an unseen force acting upon his left hand. It was futile to resist. His right hand frantically patted the horse's back, yet the steed remained in a state of paralysis. Moreover, Luo Kai was horrified to discover that the surrounding space seemed to stagnate. In an instant, the purple and white lightning serpent engulfed both him and his horse. On an unnamed hill beyond Westeros, an ancient weirwood tree cast a crimson hue upon the entire mountaintop. Within a cave, a peculiar old man was ensnared amidst a tangle of roots, his white hair contrasting with his mismatched eyes, one red, one white. This man, pierced through by the roots of the weirwood, was the three-eyed raven that Bran sought. With a sigh, the three-eyed raven closed his eyes and once more entered his green dream. On horseback, Rhaegar was engulfed in torment as violet and white lightning surged toward his golden left eye, his consciousness gradually fading. When all the lightning converged into his golden eye, the surrounding phenomena vanished. Yura, who was in the midst of issuing commands to the army, gazed in bewilderment at the now clear sky. By the heavens, could you wait until I finish giving orders before changing the weather? With no other option, Yura retraced his steps, reinstated the marching orders, and then sheepishly rode back to his beloved queen, saying, "Your Grace, we may proceed." Missandei and Varys exchanged amused glances, while Daenerys appeared somewhat unsettled. Rhaegar, the instigator of the chaos, slumped on horseback, only to be caught by Ball, who prevented him from falling. In that moment, Ball's eyes softened. Her usual indifference and aloofness momentarily replaced. Her memories had returned. However, even with her memories restored, she was no longer the god of thunder of Teyvat, but rather the god of thunder of Rhaegar. The horse, having undergone a baptism of lightning, now possessed an otherworldly quality, its eyes a striking violet and white. Ball gently patted its back, and it galloped forth with great strength. Dario, his face smeared with sand, awoke from his stupor, gazing vacantly at the deserted mountain path. What had brought him here? His eyes fell upon a half-buried phone. With great effort, he crawled over to retrieve it, absent-mindedly touching its surface until he accidentally opened the camera interface. What a marvelous mirror! A surge of energy coursed through Dario, his gaze becoming clearer, infused with newfound hope. Miss Ball would surely adore this. Unconscious Rhaegar leaned against Ball, impervious to the jostling of the horse, his pained expression betraying a hint of relaxation. "How much longer do you intend to feign unconsciousness?" Ball teased. Rhaegar managed to crack open an eye, wishing to clarify that he had only just awakened. Yet, having gained an advantage, he decided against revealing his true state. Straightening his posture, he faced forward and shyly inquired, "You remember everything now?" A faint smile graced Ball's lips as she softly replied, "Yes." The sea breeze caressed their faces, bringing a refreshing sensation while sweeping away her past. Chapter 15. You look more beautiful though the aberration was temporarily absent. Ball had emerged as a master of thunder. With her fair complexion and striking beauty, she was undeniably captivating. Despite the profound evolution in their relationship, Rhaegar remained steadfast in his intentions, harboring no ulterior motives. None. The dual disc allowed Rhaegar to enter the aberration and control its form at will, yet it seemed ineffective against Ball. Their dynamic resembled that of equals. If one day it were possible, Luo, truly wished to sit behind the horse alongside Ball, who was unaware of his hidden intentions. With a light kick to the horse's belly, it let out a loud neigh and galloped forward. Luo tightened his grip on the reins, struggling to maintain his balance. What caused the horse to act so wildly again? At least my dog is obedient. After traversing a stretch of land, the two finally caught up with the rear of the army. Luo tightened the reins and inquired, "Is your phone still with you, Ball? Call me by another name." "You know," Ball replied, her eyes clear, suddenly resting her chin on Luo's shoulder, missing her sister, Ing. Luo dared not move, his heart racing. Is your phone truly still in your possession?" "It's not." "Oh. Then what are you keeping? Did you lose it again?" The horse came to a sudden halt, causing both riders to lean tightly against one another, appearing intimately close from any distance. Luo's heart ached. It had been sheer luck when Sam found his phone last time. And losing it now would not bring the same fortune. Perhaps it had vanished when Ball transformed into a storm, or it might have been struck down. Feeling Luo's body tense, Ball suddenly seized the reins from his hands, turning the horse back in the direction they came from. It must have fallen on the ground. "Don't worry, I won't let it get lost." "That's good," Luo murmured, his gaze drifting, his voice barely a whisper. No one could resist the allure of a selfie. Dario, who had found the phone, gradually became enraptured by its novelty, hesitantly exploring the mirror while walking, reluctant to return it to Ball. It was too handsome. He wished to keep it. Upon hearing the sound of hooves, Dario quickly tucked the phone into his chest, his eyes fixated on the approaching riders. When he discerned the intimate posture of Ball and Luo, his heart shattered. "How about you switch to the front next? I'm not used to someone leaning against me." "All right." Another blow struck Dario, rekindling memories of events past. Miss Ball seemed to radiate light, even moving towards the heavens. Luo contemplated dismounting to switch places. But Ball gracefully sidled up to him, leaning into his embrace, and boldly asked, "Dario, I saw you holding something earlier. Could you show it to me?" "I found a black mirror, but I'm not sure if it's yours, Miss Ball." Dario reluctantly retrieved the phone from his chest. Upon seeing the device, Ball's expression brightened. And she extended her hand. "That's exactly what I lost. I cannot thank you enough." Witnessing Ball's beautiful smile, Dario's gloomy heart suddenly revived, his handsome beard almost fluttering with joy. "It is my honor, Miss Ball." Ball took the phone and turned to hand it to Luo, asking, "Could you check if it's damaged?" Luo illuminated the screen, glancing at it before responding, "There's nothing wrong. It's still usable." Ball felt a wave of relief wash over her smile growing even more radiant. Dario watched, somewhat dazed, since joining Daenerys' faction. He had never seen Ball smile in such a manner. However, Ball's next words sliced through his throat like the scythe of judgment. "Dario." Luo Kai expressed his disdain for being overshadowed by others. Thus it would be prudent for you to walk alongside. With that remark, Ball once again flicked the reins. Observing the retreating figure, Dario wore a grimace. "Have you employed me as a mere tool again?" Luo Kai could not help but inquire as he glanced back. "What tool?" Ball's face radiated with mirth, her violet eyes glinting with mischief as she abruptly tugged the reins and steadied herself. The speed suddenly doubled, catching Luo Kai off guard, leaving him no choice but to embrace Ball's slender waist. The army of the Mother of Dragons was comprised predominantly of the Unsullied, who had been subjected to brutal training from a young age by the slave masters of Astapor. Not only had they been stripped of their manhood, but their spirits had also been shattered and humiliated. Coupled with the wine of courage, these Unsullied, devoid of personality, emotion, and self, became an invulnerable war machine. As Luo Kai clutched Ball's delicate waist, none of the Unsullied cast a glance his way. Rather, it was the members of the Second Son's mercenary company who frequently stole glances. They were undoubtedly curious to discover which man could command the attention of Lord Ball, who rode alongside the Mother of Dragons. With one eye golden and the other black, and his short, straight black hair, Luo Kai stood out. "Captain, your defeat seems rather unjust." It became evident that women were indeed fond of pretty boys. In comparison to the mercenary knights weathered by the elements, Luo Kai's complexion was notably fairer. Upon seeing Luo Kai, the Mother of Dragons appeared to comprehend why Ball had chosen such a man. The two shared a similar facial structure, both possessing faces unlike any seen before, clearly from the same origin. Even their eyes bore distinctive traits, one golden, one black, both purple. Dany, this is Luo Kai, a dear friend of mine. Ball introduced as she rode forward. Luo Kai courteously addressed the mother of dragons. Greetings, your majesty. Ah, so you are a friend of Ball's. It is a pleasure to meet you. We are en route to Meereen. If you wish, you may call me Dany, just as Ball does, she responded with remarkable politeness, surprising even Yora, who had followed her for many years. Suddenly, Dany leaned closer to Ball, and they engaged in hushed conversation. Are you satisfied? Though Ball had regained her memories, her feelings for Dany, this mortal queen, remained undiminished. As in the past, she reached out to caress Dany's cheek, reminiscent of how she once tenderly stroked her sister during storms. So you have become this close? Still holding Ball, Luo Kai's face flushed with a sudden warmth, as if recalling a joyful memory. Embracing the affectionate gesture, Dany abruptly inquired, where is Daario? Ball, her cheeks betraying no shame, replied, he wishes to strengthen his physique. Sir Yora, could you please fetch our commander of the Second Sons? Despite being younger than Ball, Dany was far more astute in matters of human connection than this reincarnated god of thunder. It was clear that she intended to ride in tandem, despite enduring some tribulations. The entire party reached the vicinity of Meereen by sunset the following day. Still riding together, Ball suddenly asked Luo Kai, is Dany beautiful? After a moment of contemplation, Luo Kai replied candidly, yes, provided she does not smile. A faint smile graced Bale's face as he leaned back on his elbows, gently nudging Roke in the abdomen. Roke emitted a muffled grunt, quickly realizing his blunder after having perused numerous theories. One must never extol another woman in the presence of a woman, even if they share a bond as deep as sisters. What about me? I am more beautiful. Amid their playful banter, the iconic architecture of Meereen came into view. A colossal pyramid, standing 266 meters tall and boasting 33 stories, was crowned with a grand statue of a harpy. Surrounding this great pyramid were 20 smaller pyramids, inhabited by the slave masters and affluent of Meereen. Gazing at the towering structure, reminiscent of the Great Wall in its grandeur, Roke could not resist pulling out his phone to capture photos of the pyramid. However, before he could snap more than a few pictures, Ball suddenly snatched the phone away. After indulging in the customary selfies, Ball began capturing candid shots of the surrounding crowd, with a particular focus on Daenerys. Before the main gate of Meereen lay a vast expanse, where Daenerys' army assembled like blocks of black sugar. 2 statues of harpies stood sentinel at the entrance, while the noble masters, the wealthy, and the commoners they ruled gathered upon the city walls. Daenerys, riding her white steed, approached the forefront of her forces, dismounting to survey the scene under the watchful eyes of Yora and Barristan. The gates creaked open, and a cavalryman charged forth. Daenerys inquired, are they preparing to attack? Yora, well versed in the local customs, quickly clarified, that must be Meereen's champion. They wish for you to send forth our champion to face him. A one-on-one duel was indeed a splendid way to bolster morale, provided the victor emerged triumphant. Unexpectedly, the cavalryman dismounted and, facing Daenerys and her Unsullied, began to relieve himself with a brazen display. The onlookers atop the walls, regardless of their status as nobles or slaves, erupted in taunts. Though the act bore little physical harm, it was steeped in profound insult. Everyone was aware of the Unsullied's reputation. This cavalryman was plainly expressing disdain for Daenerys and her forces. Ball approached Roke and stood behind Daenerys, her eyes flashing with a deadly intensity. The last time such a crude affront had occurred, Ball had reduced the offender to cinders. Roke sensed a palpable shift in Bale's demeanor. Her gentleness was replaced by an imposing aura. Ball. Both Roke and Daenerys exclaimed simultaneously. Roke's plea was born of a desire to prevent Ball from acting impulsively, while Daenerys considered the implications of assassinating the cavalryman. Her mission in Meereen was to liberate the local slaves, not to incite unnecessary bloodshed. I have words for the people of Meereen, but first, let this fool be silenced. Shall I confront their champion? Daenerys turned to address the crowd. The Unsullied's commander, Grey Worm, was the first to speak in Valyrian. Grant me this honor, Mother of Dragons. I shall not fail you. Daenerys declined him, citing her role as commander of the Unsullied. The gray-haired Barristan, stepping forward, volunteered, once the mightiest of the Targaryen dynasty. He was known as the fearless Barristan, a testament to his formidable prowess. Even in old age, he was incomparable to the knights of a mere city-state. Daenerys once again refused him, citing her duty to protect herself. Yora, who harbored the same deep affection for Daenerys, was similarly rebuffed, and at that moment, Daario stepped forward. He sought to impress the crowd, particularly Rhaegar and Barristan, and regain the favor of the goddess. Chapter 16. Do not weep. I am not yet dead. One must not be overly ostentatious. As the knight charged at Daario with his lance, the Meereenese on the walls erupted in cheers, envisioning how Daario would fall at the hands of their champion. Yet, Daario merely drew a short sword, casting it with elegance to strike the knight's steed squarely on the head. The knight tumbled to the ground alongside his horse but staggered back to his feet. Amidst the swirling dust, Dario produced a curved Valyrian dagger and swiftly dispatched the knight. What a display of valor! Rhaegar, being a true man, felt compelled to comment on such a spectacle. Barristan nodded, his expression remaining largely unperturbed. The Myrinese on the walls were equally astonished by the turn of events, their anger igniting as they commanded their slave soldiers to unleash a volley of arrows at Dario. The arrows fell with precision at Dario's feet. In retaliation, Dario began to engage in reckless behavior, unaware that in Barristan's eyes, he was no different from the knight who had fallen before him. Though there was a semblance of allegiance, Barristan felt no attraction towards such a man. As Rhaegar observed quietly, he suddenly sensed Barristan directing her attention towards him and inquired, "What is it? Is there something on my face?" "Do not imitate him," Barristan replied, her brow furrowed as she waved away the foul scent wafting through the air. Rhaegar, too, found the odor somewhat pungent and covered both his and Barristan's noses with his hands. For the first time, Barristan, with wide eyes, gazed at Rhaegar, realizing he merely wished to shield her from the stench, and her raised hand slowly descended. Such an odd sensation. After the one-on-one duel, Daenerys commenced a passionate speech in High Valyrian. Rhaegar, still pinching his nose, asked Barristan, "Can you understand what Daenerys is saying?" "I can't," Barristan replied languidly, her youthful visage lending an extra charm to her words. Rhaegar felt the odor had dissipated enough and released his hands. Breathing through his nose became noticeably easier. Yet, before he could take a few breaths, Barristan mimicked his earlier action, both hands at the ready. "I shall return the gesture." Delicate, slightly cool, soft as if devoid of bone, that was Rhaegar's sensation at that moment. Must it be so childish? Amid their playful banter, Daenerys concluded her impassioned address and commanded the trebuchets to target Meereen. At her behest, barrels filled with shackles were launched into the air like meteors. The Myrinese on the walls panicked, fearing the barrels might crash upon them. Yet, akin to the arrows shot by the Myrinese, the barrels were launched with precision, striking buildings and scattering shackles across the ground. Witnessing the very shackles that had once adorned their own necks and limbs, the eyes of all the slaves transformed. The Mother of Dragons did not speak falsehoods. She had come to rescue us. The great lords found themselves gripped by unease. The Mother of Dragons was indeed formidable, seeking the support of the lowest and most numerous slaves to undermine Meereen from within. Casting a glance at the dimming sky, Daenerys retreated with her spoils and army to a secure location to establish her encampment. The seeds had been sown, awaiting their chance to take root and flourish in the abyss of darkness. To hasten their growth, a modest amount of water would suffice. With adequate care, they might sprout by the following day. At the behest of Baal, she shared a tent with Luo Kai, a sight that extinguished any hope within Dario. He was not one to linger over what was lost. As he observed the flickering candlelight within the tent gradually extinguishing, Dario raised his flagon and took a deep swig. "To my lost love." Daenerys had no time for such frivolities. She needed to send forth farmers to nurture the seeds of freedom. Once a slave herself, the purists, along with a few soldiers, shed their armor and disguised themselves as Meereen slaves, carrying heavy bundles of weapons through the ancient city's sewers. As night fell, the echoes of agonized cries from the great lords of Meereen filled the air. Luo Kai and Baal, too, had not found rest, seated together on a sleeping mat, recounting their journeys since arriving in this world of power struggles. Following his fall, Baal had transformed into a rident tree, purifying the polluted Inazuma tainted by the remnants of beasts. When Luo Kai mentioned the White Walkers, Baal murmured softly, astonished that such filth existed in this realm. Luo Kai boldly replied, "Fear not. Those White Walkers are merely stronger versions of zombies. The Night King stands no chance against you." Baal shook his head, positioning his right hand before his chest as if to draw a blade. A violet-white radiance illuminated the entire tent. "Is that the incense blade?" Luo Kai gazed in astonishment at the blade Baal withdrew from her chest, overwhelmed by an indescribable awe. When Baal ascended to godhood, her divine might birthed a blade that had yet to be sharpened. At the moment of her demise, she entrusted the sword to her sister, Raiden Shogun, who, using her own blood, honed its edge. In her final moments, Baal named it One Heart, One Dream, a testament to her noble heart that witnessed and safeguarded the beauty of Inazuma. Later, Raiden Shogun imparted deeper significance to it, symbolizing a purer, more potent spirit that captured fleeting treasures within the ephemeral dream of the world. Suddenly, Luo Kai's left eye radiated golden light, and a beam of light enveloped the violet-white blade, exerting a powerful pull upon it. "Quick, close your eyes," Baal commanded. "Oh." Luo Kai hurriedly pressed down his eyelids. Yet, while his right eye complied, his left defied his command, shining even brighter. "I can't close it," Luo Kai exclaimed in distress, attempting to shield it with his hand but discovering the light to be as tangible as substance itself. Ball, unable to provide a reply, gripped the hilt with all her strength as the unsharpened blade was engulfed by the golden beam, the sound of thunder resonating clearly. Bale's eyes glimmered with violet-white light as the once drifting one dream gradually returned to her grasp. As she believed she could retract the violet-white blade of power back into herself, a sudden, more formidable force wrenched Dreaming Heart from her grasp. No. Ball stared in despair as Dreaming Heart pointed directly at Luo Kai. At the moment the blade's tip made contact with his left eye, golden light abruptly dissipated, allowing Luo Kai to finally close his left eye. However, it was too late. The sound of blood and bone being pierced echoed ominously. The violet-white blade penetrated Luo Kai's left eye and drove straight into the left side of his skull. The crimson blood that spilled forth evaporated under the thunderous essence contained within the blade. Luo Kai's hands fell limply to his sides as he toppled backward. Ball rushed forward to embrace him, tears streaming down her cheeks. She had merely wished to convey some truths to him, yet she had unwittingly made him the first to perish beneath her blade. Suddenly, as he lay in Ball's arms, Luo Kai opened his right eye and weakly uttered, "Do not cry, I am not dead yet." Ball, both startled and overjoyed, managed to smile through her tear-streaked face. "It hurts terribly. Please, pull the blade out for me." Yet, upon hearing his request, Ball hesitated, fearful that removing Dreaming Heart might lead to his utter demise. Summoning an unexpected surge of strength, Luo Kai raised his left hand and grasped the blade, pulling with all his might. After a muffled grunt, he hurled Dreaming Heart into the air, where it plunged deep into the ground. "Have I become disfigured?" His voice was barely audible, the depths of his wound shimmering with golden light, as if slowly mending. No. Ball's tears fell anew, for although Luo Kai's left eye remained tightly shut, the wound inflicted by Dreaming Heart had created an even larger gash. "You don't look well when you cry," he remarked, forcing his right eye open. Ball quickly conjured a smile. His right eye appeared unfocused, and the golden glow at the side of his left eye dimmed significantly. "I feel a bit cold. Could you fetch something to cover me?" "Luo Kai, do not sleep." Ball retrieved a blanket and draped it over him, finally grasping the anguish her sister must have felt as she witnessed her own demise. "Is it warmer now?" Ball nestled against him, embracing him tightly. Yet, after an extended silence, she received no response. A flash of golden light flickered from Luo Kai's left wrist, and the dual disc quietly manifested, revealing a new crack encircling it. In the next moment, the dual disc fell away with a clatter. In the woods of Wolfswood, near Winterfell, a creature of the other suddenly tumbled from the branches of a tree as it felt the shackles binding it dissolve. However, this returning to its primal essence did not elicit a cry of freedom. It lifted its drooping head to gaze at the sky through the treetops, fading into the depths of the Wolfswood. Daenerys' seed plan had sprouted overnight, now grown enough to open the gates of Meereen for her. Countless slaves shed their shackles, chanting in unison to welcome Daenerys. Amidst the throngs, she ascended the Great Pyramid, surveying all of Meereen. Suddenly, on a distant mountain, a purple figure caught her eye. It was Ball. Luo Kai lay peacefully behind her, like a child. Ball. Daenerys' joy diminished by half as she seemed to see Ball waving goodbye from across much of Meereen. "Khaleesi, the Great Ones have arrived." Yor's inquiry distracted Daenerys, and when she turned her gaze back to the mountain where Bael was, he had vanished. The morning sun bore a chill as Bael sat upon his steed, cradling Rickon in one arm while grasping the reins with the other. Suddenly, 3 beastly roars echoed through the sky. Bael looked up to see the 3 dragons come to bid farewell. "Take good care of your mother, and do not end up like me," he murmured, stealing a glance at Rickon, whose violet eyes were filled with profound sorrow. The elder brother, Drogon, circled around Bael and his horse before spitting out a charred leg of lamb. Bael gazed at the leg, tears streaming anew from the corners of his eyes. With a flick of the reins, his horse let out a long neigh, carrying Bael and Rickon westward toward Essos, where Rickon's memories lingered. Chapter 17. Hope though Rickon had perished, he had not fully succumbed to death. The damage wrought by dreams and aspirations could not be mended. In a desperate attempt to sustain Rickon's bodily functions and vitality, Bael severed a part of her own power and divinity, infusing it into him. This was the only solution she could conceive. Presently, Rickon existed as a living corpse, his body sustained solely by a fragment of Bael's strength, yet his consciousness remained unreachable. Even if it meant traversing the entire world, Bael was determined to discover a means to resurrect Rickon. Where there is hope, there lies opportunity. During Daenerys' campaign in Meereen, the realm experienced numerous events, both grand and trivial. The Black Castle came under attack from wildlings, and Jon Snow witnessed the love of his life, Ygritte, fall to the arrow of a peasant boy named Olly. "You know nothing, Jon Snow." That phrase was indelibly etched into Jon's heart. After the arduous defense of the Black Castle, Jon embarked alone across the wall to negotiate with King Mance Rayder beyond the realm. Meanwhile, Stannis, emboldened by the Red Priestess Melisandre, returned with his forces to the wall and captured Mance along with hundreds of wildlings. In another turn of fate, King Joffrey was poisoned at his own wedding feast, leaving Cersei heartbroken and directing her ire towards her brother, the imp Tyrion, and the fleeing Sansa amidst the chaos. The two accused were newlyweds, a union of Lannister and Stark, compounded by the humiliation of a beauty wed to a dwarf, an affront beyond imagination. Fortunately, Tyrion was not as malevolent as his sister Cersei. He treated the unwilling Sansa with respect. Perhaps this was one reason for Cersei's disdain toward Tyrion. Unwilling to be accused of regicide, Tyrion proposed trial by combat. Should he or his chosen champion face the accuser in a duel, death or surrender would signify the conclusion. Initially, Tyrion hoped his loyal friend Bronn would fight on his behalf, recalling how Bronn had once secured victory for him during the trial in the Eyrie. However, upon learning that Cersei's champion was the Mountain, Gregor Clegane, Bronn faltered. In a moment of despair, Tyrion considered his brother Jaime, but the Kingslayer had lost his right hand, making him incapable of besting even an ordinary knight, let alone the Mountain. At the moment when Tyrion found himself utterly isolated, the prince from Dorne, Oberyn Martell, voluntarily offered to participate in the trial by combat on his behalf. This decision stemmed from the brutal murder of Oberyn's sister at the hands of the Mountain. Oberyn's sole motivation was to avenge his sister during the trial. On the day of the trial, Oberyn, with his serpentine agility, inflicted severe punishment upon the Mountain. Tragically, as he denounced the Mountain's atrocities, the hulking brute managed to close the distance and crushed Oberyn's skull with his bare hands. The law of momentum dictated that one cannot ride a wave of fortune indefinitely. Although the Mountain emerged victorious, he too succumbed to the lethal poison on Oberyn's spear. The trial concluded with Tyrion being found guilty and his father, Lord Tywin, pronounced the death sentence. That night, Jaime secretly facilitated Tyrion's escape, and before the diminutive villain fled, he shared a poignant exchange with Lord Tywin, ultimately ending his father's life with a crossbow bolt. Subsequently, aided by Varys, Tyrion boarded a ship bound for Pentos. Meanwhile, Arya Stark seized the opportunity to escape to Braavos, using a special coin bestowed upon her by Jaqen H'ghar, after Sandor Clegane was defeated by Brienne of Tarth. During this time, the woods near Winterfell had become a forbidden realm, with surviving hunters recounting tales of a terrifying creature lurking within. Descriptions spoke of ghostly howls, eyeless heads, towering black forms, and a sinister, elongated tail. Moreover, there was more than one of these malevolent beings. Newly installed in Winterfell, Roose Bolton dispatched his bastard son Ramsay to investigate, hoping to capture a few of these creatures for domestication, thus adding a unique specialty to House Bolton. Ramsay, accompanied by his trained reek of a servant, Theon, a cadre of Bolton soldiers, and his beloved hunting dogs, inquired, "Reek, what do you believe lurks in the woods?" Theon, cowed and unable to meet Ramsay's gaze, replied, "It must be ice wolves, my lord." "Black ice wolves? Perhaps they could serve as my hunting hounds," Ramsay retorted, snapping his whip, the sharp sound echoing through the woods. By this time, summer had waned in the north, and a delicate layer of snow adorned the branches of the woods. Suddenly, several hunting dogs halted, crouching and baring their teeth in alertness. "Halt," Ramsay commanded, bringing the procession to a standstill. As they awaited his orders, the eerie cries described by the hunters filled the air. The soldiers, riddled with fear and guilt, trembled. Particularly Theon, who, transformed into a reek, was especially terrified by such haunting sounds. Even Ramsay's horse grew restless, unyielding to his attempts at reassurance. The dreadful cries grew increasingly distinct, as though the rumored monsters were concealed nearby, awaiting the moment to strike. The horse beneath Ramsay could no longer contain its panic, letting out a long whinny in a futile attempt to resist the surrounding cacophony. The hunting dogs barked incessantly. Just as Ramsay contemplated retreat, three shadowy figures emerged, resembling phantoms as they lunged at the Bolton soldiers. Amidst the chorus of terrified screams, the soldiers were swiftly brought down. Ramsay and Theon finally discerned the true form of the black creatures, confirming the hunters' accounts were indeed accurate. The eyeless brain and hunched form epitomized the alien. "Eliminate them, and capture one alive," Rams commanded loudly. The other Bolton soldiers seized their weapons and charged nervously toward the alien, yet their clumsy assault proved utterly ineffective. The alien deftly evaded their strikes, its tail piercing through the soldiers' bodies at impossible angles. The air was filled with agonizing screams. Sean wished to flee, but his tormented body trembled uncontrollably. Without Ram's command, he could hardly move a single step. Three aliens rampaged among the dozen soldiers, and while Rams watched in terror, an inexplicable thrill surged within him. He yearned to seize these three black monstrosities and tame them. However, it was not yet feasible. For nearly all 20 soldiers Rams had brought were slaughtered by the aliens. He needed to return and prepare traps and cages for capturing the creatures. Seizing the moment while the aliens tormented the remaining soldiers, Rams urged Sean to climb onto the horse, and then he departed the wolf forest with his hounds. The victorious aliens did not pursue. One alien, resembling a direwolf, let out a long howl at the retreating figures of the two, while the other two dragged several robust and intact corpses deeper into the forest. On the western coast of the eastern continent of Essos, 9 free trade city-states are scattered. Unlike the slave cities such as Meereen near Slaver's Bay, most of these city-states outwardly prohibit the keeping of slaves. Yet, the local affluent invariably find ways around this. If slaves are not permitted, they simply adopt another term, free slaves. As long as the slaves repay their debts, they may attain freedom. However, for those lowly free slaves, the debts are insurmountable. Moreover, to survive, their only recourse is to barter their bodies for sustenance. Unless fortune smiles upon them or they catch the eye of a wealthy merchant. Slavery has become an entrenched symbol in Essos. The young mother of dragons and her yet-to-mature dragons aspire to dismantle this system, a daunting and distant endeavor. 2 months have passed since Rhaegar became a living corpse. Bar, riding on horseback with him, traversed multiple free city-states and learned that the high priest of the Lord of Light, Lawler, possessed the ability to resurrect the deceased. Followers of the Lord of Light are widespread, yet the high priests are rare, generally residing in the red temples dedicated to Lawler. Bar brought Rhaegar to the nearest free city-state, Meereen, and upon locating the local red temple, he barged in without hesitation. I demand to see your high priest. Bar, carrying Rhaegar, bore no semblance of a supplicant. An unhurried old man clad in a red robe approached Bar. Upon meeting, he uttered in Valyrian that all mortals must serve. And as he perceived Bar's striking beauty, his mind began to concoct devious thoughts. Such a woman would be perfect as a temple harlot. As for Rhaegar, the old man paid him no mind. My lady, Soros has journeyed to the other side under the guidance of the true God, and cannot return at this time. Upon hearing this, Ball turned to carry Luo away from the temple of the Red God. However, the old man was unwilling to relent. Having lost sight of the King of Light's truth, he had long strayed from the temple's original purpose. A group of armed hands of sacred fire suddenly surrounded Ball. And the old man mockingly said, Madam, please offer your tributes, otherwise. In that moment, Ball comprehended that the temple had devolved into a den of malevolence. Noticing Ball's silence, the old man signaled to the hands of sacred fire. They reached out, intending to touch Ball, when suddenly, several bolts of purple-white lightning appeared out of thin air, striking directly at the heads of the hands. In an instant, all those surrounding Ball were reduced to charred remains. The old man, terrified, twisted his face in fear and attempted to flee. Yet, he could not outrun the thunder. Just as he turned, barely taking a few steps, he was struck by a lightning bolt as thick as a water snake, its immense force shattering his body. Before departing, Ball summoned the thunder of this world to descend from the heavens, utterly burying the magnificent temple of the Red God beneath the roaring storm. Chapter 18. Encounter in Volantis. After the destruction of the temple of the Red God, Ball carried Luo to the next free city-state, Telosai. As the inhabitants of Telosai primarily worshipped the three-headed god, the followers of the King of Light were significantly fewer, and the temple constructed there was notably small. Although diminutive, the faith of the red-robed monks toward the King of Light remained unwavering. The sole high priest, Shavenkas, discerned Luo's condition and understood the desires of the woman before him. Madam, while I cannot assist you directly, as long as you hold faith in the true Lord, truth shall eventually respond to you. Then you cannot resurrect the deceased? It is never we who revive the dead, but the true Lord. Was it possible that Shavenkas was also merely a charlatan? Ball, unwilling to delay even a moment longer, turned and departed with Luo. As he left, Shavenkas called out, The long night is fraught with peril, though I cannot help you witness the light of truth. The esteemed Lord Benelo of Volantis certainly can. Regardless of whether the departing woman heard him clearly, Shavenkas had fulfilled his duty with integrity, offering no deceit to the King of Light. One day, the true Lord would cast his gaze upon her. Volantis is located at the southernmost tip of the eastern continent of Essos, facing the Summer Sea, and is the closest city-state to the Slaver's Bay. The domain of Meereen. Due to its proximity, Volantis openly permits the slave trade. Thus, when alone, one must exercise utmost caution. Perhaps one moment you lie down to rest, and the next, you find yourself bound and thrown onto a slave ship. Although Varys serves merely as a master of whispers, he harbors a profound affection for the Seven Kingdoms. He once served the Mad King's father, Aerys II, and during his reign, proposed many effective counsel. Yet the Mad King earned his title for a reason. Varys' suggestions were never accepted. After the Mad King's downfall, Varys continued to serve the new king, Robert. Until King Joffrey was conspired against and poisoned by Peter Baelish and a certain elderly woman, Varys was acutely aware that under the rule of House Lannister, it was the most destitute who bore the brunt of suffering, from the birth of Daenerys in Storm's End to her current status as the Mother of Dragons. The breaker of chains, Varys has been discreetly observing the Dragon Queen. Her actions have led him to believe she is the wise ruler he has long sought. She possesses Targaryen blood yet lacks the madness of her father, the Mad King. Finally, the most fitting candidate for the Iron Throne has emerged. Thus, he boldly journeyed to Essos with the imp, Tyrion, with the sole purpose of seeking out the Dragon Queen. With Varys' persuasion, Tyrion reluctantly embarked on the road to Meereen, his constant companion being alcohol, which had transformed him into a drunken dwarf. A eunuch and a sot, indeed, a most peculiar pairing. Volantis is nestled beside a deep-sea harbor, with the mouth of the Lorne River dividing the city into two districts, connected by a long bridge that spans the river. This bridge, akin to the wall, is celebrated as one of the 9 wonders of the world. Its very name signifies its vast expanse and the width of its supports. At either end of the bridge, a medley of structures stands, a veritable bazaar where one could procure nearly anything, with a fair amount of inebriation coursing through him. Tyrion followed Varys to the entrance of the long bridge, which is framed by an archway constructed of dark stone. "Why have we come to this place?" Tyrion inquired, tilting his head towards Varys, the scent of alcohol heavy on his breath. Varys, glancing down at Tyrion, thought to himself how fortunate he was to have chosen the right companion. With his hands tucked into his sleeves, he replied, "Volantis is the closest city to Meereen. We shall rest here for a day before proceeding overland. Why not take the water route? Isn't Meereen located in Slaver's Bay?" Tyrion, now quite intoxicated, yearned for more drink. Varys kindly responded, "If you don't end up vomiting all over again as you did last time, we could indeed sail to Meereen. Let's forego that." Tyrion quickly retorted, recalling the harrowing experience of being confined in a box throughout the journey. Even now, he bore a lingering aversion to the idea of sailing. As he turned his head to survey the famed Long Bridge, a sense of melancholy washed over him. When he ascended the wall, he had been the renowned imp. Now, visiting one of the 9 wonders, he was merely a parasital dwarf. In his moment of reflection, Tyrion suddenly spotted a figure in purple that starkly contrasted with the surrounding crowd. The woman's elegant profile evoked memories of Shae, whom he had killed with his own hands. What piqued Tyrion's curiosity further was that the woman bore on her back a man, whose state, alive or dead, was uncertain. A woman carrying a man must either possess wealth or love, he mused with a scoff, urging Varys to accompany him towards the thronging entrance. As they set foot upon the long bridge, Tyrion felt as though he had entered a new world, where many slaves bore distinct marks upon their faces. Following closely behind him, Varys elucidated, "The slave masters of Volantis are quite orderly. The flies are for dung, the hammers for builders, and the tears for harlots." Tyrion began to draw comparisons, realizing that there was indeed some truth to it. At that moment, a resounding hymn reached his ears, being well read. He immediately recognized it as Valyrian. Peering over the crowd, Tyrion saw a large assembly of slaves and commoners gathered around a woman in a red robe. The hymn emanated from her lips. For each phrase she uttered, the people echoed her words. Their expressions could hardly be described as devout. They were fervent. Tyrion ascended to a platform and took a swig from his flask. The only red priest in King's Landing was the much more attractive Melisandre. Varys, with his hands tucked into his sleeves, nodded in agreement, but that was the extent of his response. When the Red Priestess proclaimed that the King of Light could even cure the stone men's grayscale, Tyrion could not help but just that prayer was far more effective than dancing to drive away disease. As the speech reached its crescendo, the Red Priestess heralded Daenerys as the savior. At this revelation, Tyrion was struck with clarity. The very devotees he had mocked were supporters of the Mother of Dragons. Wasn't this utterly absurd? With his interest waning and the contents of his flask depleted, he turned to Varys and suggested, "Let us seek out a brothel." Suddenly, Tyrion's attention was drawn to a vivid splash of color within the crowd. It was the woman in purple whom he had seen at the entrance of the long bridge. Had he truly reached a dead end? Tyrion murmured to himself. Initially intending to visit a brothel for a drink, he found himself intrigued once more. Eager to discover the woman's intentions, Varys, ever patient, joined Tyrion in observing. The woman in purple seemed to match descriptions he had encountered regarding Daenerys. Ball, visiting Volantis for the first time, had no concept of the city and nearly lost her way amidst the densely populated long bridge. Fortunately, during her time with Daenerys, she had learned Valyrian. The Red Priestess, passionately delivering her speech in Valyrian, inadvertently became Bael's guiding light. "Take me to see Benero," Ball urged the Red Priestess in Valyrian as she maneuvered through the crowd. The interrupted priestess did not exhibit anger. Instead, she fixed her gaze upon Ball and then shifted her attention to the man behind her, Lawler. Take her. The thought sprang into the Red Priestess's mind unbidden. Her eyes suddenly alight with realization. Bael's words had seemingly granted her divine inspiration. Without delay, she spoke a few words to the onlookers, who then dispersed. The Red Priestess bowed gracefully to Bael, saying, "Madam, please follow me." Tyrion and Varys exchanged knowing glances as they discreetly trailed behind, led by the Red Priestess. Bael arrived at the far end of the long bridge, where a towering black wall loomed, rising over 60 meters high. Behind this oval-shaped black edifice lay the old district of Volantis, home to the city's magistrate and slave owners. Foreigners were not permitted entry without permission. As the Red Priestess guided Bael around the black wall towards the adjacent temple of Lawler, Tyrion and Varys, who had been following closely, called out, "Ladies, please wait a moment. Is there something you wish to discuss, esteemed guests?" The woman in the crimson robe gracefully inclined her head. Having already taken note of the peculiar pair, one short and stout. In stark contrast to her courteous demeanor, Bael exuded an air of aloofness. "We also seek the blessings of the Lord of Light, and hope to witness the grandeur of the Red Temple." Tyrion's face was a canvas of yearning and supplication. Lacking physical stature, he endeavored to compensate with his words and expressions. "Anyone who believes in the Lord of Light may receive guidance. Please follow me," she invited. Gratefully, Tyrion positioned himself beside Bael, subtly observing the figure of Roka behind her, with limbs languidly hanging and a pallor that seemed almost ethereal. The wound traversing from her left eye to the back of her head raised a question. Could she be saved? A glance at Bael's elongated form revealed how her loose garments could barely conceal her alluring contours, complemented by her strikingly symmetrical visage and enigmatic violet eyes. What a remarkable woman, one might lament. Unlike Tyrion's critical musings on Roka and Bael, Varys's attention was drawn to Bael's identity. With her violet hair and eyes, she bore an uncanny resemblance to the woman often seen alongside Daenerys in the intelligence reports. What had transpired in Meereen? Chapter 19. Dream or reality? The Red Temple of Volantis stands unparalleled among other city-states. Its beams, columns, steps, walls, vaults, towers, and aerial corridors interconnect seamlessly, as though the entire edifice were carved from a single colossal stone. Its vastness, Tyrion mused, rivaled that of 3 great September of Baelor combined. The walls of the temple were adorned with a myriad of hues, reds, yellows, golds, and oranges, merging into one another like clouds at sunset. "Please wait here," the woman in crimson instructed before departing. "May I be so bold as to inquire, are you carrying your husband?" Tyrion suddenly posed his question. Throughout their journey, Bael had not deigned to spare him even a glance. Was it not peculiar enough that he, a dwarf, did not attract her attention? He must be dead, he concluded, finally eliciting a response. Bael's steps faltered, her cool visage turning toward Tyrion, her violet eyes brimming with disdain. An invisible aura enveloped Tyrion, as if he were facing a divine being. Varys quickly intervened. "Miss Bael, please excuse my companion's lack of decorum. He has indulged a bit too much." "Do you know me?" Bael inquired, retracting her gaze. Tyrion, feeling the weight of her scrutiny, breathed heavily as he attempted to draw from his wine pouch, only to find it nearly empty after several futile efforts. "We have come on behalf of the Dragon Queen. I am Varys, and this is Tyrion Lannister," Varys declared, revealing his hands tucked within his sleeves. Having heard of the witch who was like a sister to the Dragon Queen, he was fortunate to find that Miss Bael was indeed more enchanting than the tales had suggested. Upon hearing Varys mention Daenerys, Bael's expression softened slightly. Yet that was the extent of her warmth. She held little fondness for Tyrion's tongue. "Do not presume that a few sips of wine have rendered me oblivious." As Tyrion continued to fumble with his wine pouch, the grand doors of the temple swung open unexpectedly. 20 hands, each wielding a flaming greatsword, emerged from the grand entrance and formed 2 parallel lines, raising their swords high in a crisscrossed manner. Following them was a tall, slender man with a bald head, his cheeks, chin, and scalp adorned with intricate flame tattoos. "Varys," he remarked, "he is akin to you, yet taller, slimmer, and possesses something more," whispered Tyrion as he concealed his wine pouch. "Do you wish to be consumed by their flames?" Varys retorted, harboring no desire for others to mock his frail existence. Even if it were meant in jest, Tyrion exaggeratedly belched, declaring, "I am inebriated." Varys suppressed his exasperation, silently reassuring himself that all choices were his own, leaving no one else to blame. Baelor, too, was taken aback by Tyrion's sharp tongue, wondering what good could arise from such a man meeting Daenerys. Meanwhile, Benero had already approached the gathering. His gaze first flitted over Tyrion and Varys, then lingered on the seemingly slumbering Rhaegar behind Baelor, before finally settling on Baelor's cold, striking visage. Abruptly lowering his body, Benero welcomed with a smile, "The flames of our Lord have been burning for you for some time. Please, enter the temple with me." The servant of the Light King, the fire of truth, The light of wisdom, Binero, adorned with numerous titles, exhibited such humility towards Baelor. This display of deference was a privilege not even the governors of Volantis had ever known. Varys even suspected that Daenerys herself would not receive such treatment from Binero. What could possibly compel the servant of the Light King to act in such a manner? Varys could not fathom, nor dare to imagine. Can you resurrect him? Baelor inquired, refraining from entering the temple, instead cradling Rhaegar's body in his arms. Tell me, can you bring him back from the darkness? Binero remained silent, extending his hands to accept Rhaegar's form. After a moment of hesitation, Baelor relinquished Rhaegar to Binero. Should we follow them inside? Tyrion asked, glancing at Baelor as he traversed the path of sacred flames. Varys tucked his hands back into his sleeves, retreating as he remarked, unless you truly wish to meet their true lord. Tyrion hurried after him, exclaiming, I believe I am not fortunate enough for that. A brothel suits me better. Within the temple hall, numerous flaming altars lined both sides, culminating in a multi-tiered white platform, the uppermost surface intricately carved with a blazing red heart, encircled by a ring of sword-like torches. Binero placed Rhaegar upon the fiery heart and raised his hands, chanting incantations that eluded Baelor's comprehension. Although the temple doors were firmly shut, an inexplicable breeze arose, causing the flames on either side of the hall to sway gently. The wind intensified, transforming the flames from a delicate dance into a wild, untamed frenzy. Baelor's garments rustled fiercely, strands of hair whipping about her face, yet her expression remained composed, unwavering as she gazed upon Rhaegar. The wildly flickering flames suddenly broke free from their confines, carried upward by the wind toward the platform above. Meanwhile, the flame tattoo on Benelo's face seemed to come alive, burning away from his skin. There was no pain, only a look of reverence. As all the flames coalesced into a floating blossom above the altar, Baal's expression finally shifted. She sensed an aura akin to divine justice. Oh God. Benello lowered his head and knelt beside Luo Kai. In the next moment, that blossom of flame erupted with a brilliant light. Under the radiance, every object within the hall lost its color and shadow. Yet Baal was an exception. Her hue remained a vibrant purple amidst this luminous world, and behind her, her shadow remained distinctly visible, oddly, yet naturally so. Her violet eyes shimmered with light, strands of purple-white lightning emerging from her form, converging behind her to create a grand triple thunderbolt ring. At that moment, Baal revealed her divine aspect of the thunder god to the consciousness within the flame. All that was missing was the blade. The flames flickered once more, abruptly extinguishing, and the entire red temple was enveloped in an eerie stillness and boundless darkness. Pure darkness. The radiant might of Baal's thunder could barely illuminate her own form. Show your entirety. The voice resonated like a heartbeat's first thump, akin to Dew's first arrival on the earth, like the wind caressing every corner. A flicker of confusion crossed Baal's eyes as she hesitated, raising her right hand. The triple thunderbolt ring behind her crumbled, and the surrounding darkness surged to engulf her. You need not blame yourself. Do not fear the past. Summon the courage and resolve to protect Inazuma. For me and for yourself. The erupting purple-white blade of light, accompanied by thunder, shattered the darkness, restoring the surrounding scene to its original form. Above the altar, that flame drifted like petals towards the wound on Luo Kai's left eye, merging with the earth. Light fused with matter. The originally grotesque wound gradually vanished and healed. Luo Kai suddenly opened his eyes, awakening from a soft bed, reaching to touch his left eye. At that moment, Baal entered from outside. Really? Luo Kai was uncertain whether he was alive. Where am I? Our home? Have you forgotten? Baal suddenly embraced him tightly. You're holding me a bit too tightly. Could you loosen your grip? Just as he spoke, her hold became even tighter. I'm a bit hungry. Is there anything to eat? Luo Kai had no choice but to change the subject. Baal climbed onto Luo Kai's back, saying, I made your favorite dish. Carry me to get it. When a woman climbs onto your back and requests to be carried, a person with even a modicum of understanding would comply. Yet Luo Kai replied, I'm nearly starving. How can I have the strength to carry you? Baal stubbornly wriggled, lacking any semblance of a goddess, resembling a petulant little girl instead. I can't stand you. Hold on tight. In the next moment, the scene subtly transformed. An altar, 2 rows of flames, and Benello lying prostrate upon the platform. The dreamer within the dream never questions their reality, as everything seems as it should be. Luo Kai inquired, who is this bald head? Should we greet him? The voice of Baal was warm and melodious, captivating to the ear. Luo Kai approached Binero and inquired, Hello, can you hear me? Binero slowly lifted his head, the fiery tattoos on his chin and cheeks appearing freshly etched, with flames flickering in his eyes, fixated intently on Luo Kai. A shiver ran down Luo Kai's spine, and he tightened his grip around Baal's thigh as he made his way down from the high platform. As he passed between the 2 rows of long flame pedestals within the hall, he felt as though he were escaping from the very depths of hell. Unable to resist glancing back, He discovered that Bonero had vanished from the elevated platform, prompting an absurd thought to arise in his mind. Could it be that this place was indeed hell? He tried to quicken his pace, yet the weight of Ball on his back became increasingly burdensome, causing his legs to tremble under the strain. "Are you tired?" Wall suddenly inquired, urging him to pause for a moment. The man's voice sent chills down Luo Kai's spine, and he instinctively wished to release the figure behind him, only to find himself ensnared by a pair of fiery hands gripping his neck, refusing to let go. The floor beneath him abruptly fractured, and the circular stone pillars supporting the ceiling crumbled with a deafening crash. Everything faded away, the temple transforming into an endless abyss of darkness, as Luo Kai could only watch helplessly as he plummeted further into the void. Time lost all meaning until a faint glimmer of light, akin to a firefly, emerged before him, cradling his falling form. In the next instant, the dark canopy above split open, drawing Luo Kai into its depths.